What's up, gamers? This is Battle Mallet Podcast, episode 33, Hex Ed Direchasm Rivals Overview. For anyone that's not familiar, the Battle Mallet Podcast is a podcast delving into the minds of 2 to 4 busy gamers, playing games that they love and balancing life with those games. My name is Jared Johnson, and tonight I am joined by the ever-present Jason Tabled Noob Murray.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. All the things.
All the things. Gosh, we are so used to doing virtual recorded conferences and webinars that the vernacular just lingers. It's wonderful.
You never know what time of the day it is.
Oh, that's true. I mean, people are, I mean, the last time I looked at the analytics for this podcast, like 2 years ago or whatever, when I looked at it, we had listeners in Australia and Russia and Sweden. So, I mean, who knows? People could be listening from anywhere at any time. And it's great. And I love it. So in this episode, we are going to continue our Rivals Warbands overview. We're going to dig into the Direchasm season warbands and also the Warhammer Underworlds starter set, I believe it is called. Yes, the 2-player starter set. But before we dig into those warbands, I did want to take a little break from Underworld's content and say, Jason, what have you been up to? Since the last time we talked about what we've been up to, hobby-wise, game-wise?
We've played Rivals. The league's almost over.
Yeah?
Oh, my Lord, what is going on?
I don't know. Me too. Nice, that's fun. This is what happens when you record with somebody that lives 15 minutes from you. You get the same Amber Alerts.
That's right, Amber Alerts, phones beeping. I thought it was going to be for the weather that's coming in. So what have I been up to? It's the start of the year, so I think let's start with trying to make hobby goals and resolutions for the year. Trying to get projects, with you guys, with the podcast crew set up, to paint things or be working towards the same games. Like I said, we're hot and heavy in the Rivals League. There's 1 week left, only a few games to be played, and it's really, really tight, so that's really good to see. And the fact that we've had, a full turnout almost every week we've done it, so that's been very, very encouraging. And then I built some dragons for AOS.
I was about to ask. How's building those dragons? Because you started that, and then I promptly began turning into a pumpkin. But I saw the finished product. I mean, those models look awesome. Are they just super cool in person? Like, do you want to just grab them and make dragon noises and fly them around?
So I will say the kids that I build a lot of models, and the kids are like, yeah, whatever. Maybe some Marvel Crisis Protocol that they like, but those they gravitated to. They really, really like them. When I was putting them together, they were a little. I think I kept saying, I hope they meet my expectations because, they look great in pictures and stuff. And they're a little bit small when they're on the sprue, but once they're together, they are freaking awesome.
That's awesome. I'm excited. I can't wait to play against them in, 3 months or whatever.
That's
the next time we play AOS together.
What have you been up to?
Yeah, so for me, it's been some AOS. I have built and painted a Gothazar Harvester. I have built a Mortek Crawler. So for this is for my OC Bone Reaper army. Been having a lot of fun with that, and did a pretty quick and dirty job on the Kainan crew. So I started them this week. Yeah, I think I started them on Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, and I finished them last night / early this morning. So it's now Friday, January 14th. And so probably only maybe 4 hours for the whole warband. A lot of contrast work, and then going through and picking out details. But it was fun. It was cool. It's nice to have a completed warband, and I feel like I can be on track to stay up to date with the Harrow Deep season. So I'm going to try to knock out Xandar's Truth Seekers next week in advance of Black Powder's Buccaneers, which come out in a week and a day.
That's awesome.
Yeah, No, I'm excited. And like you, like Jason, I have been working on some hobby goals. So I actually got to check one off today because I finished the Kainan crew. So other than that, I want to get all the Underworld stuff done, and then I've got some Marvel Crisis Protocol that I want to get paid into. Anyway, I just thought it would be fun to take a break from the usual and get caught up. So with that out of the way, we are going to dig into the Direchasm season within the Rivals format. For anyone that isn't aware, the Warhammer Underworlds errata and FAQ were just released. And according to the documentation, it is for Championship and Alliance format only. But Jason, you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's very clear that all the documents are Championship. There is a document for Rivals, but it was not updated. And I'm fine with that. I think Rivals is meant to be the intro version for a lot of players. I don't want to say casual because there's still a lot to that onion to peel away. But the only thing that I think I wish I would have liked to see carried over was the Inspire steps that were added. It would change some of our reviews from the previous season and help some warbands out. But I totally understand if it doesn't carry over, because there's a lot of updates to cards and changing in fighter cards that is just hard for it. It kind of goes against what Rivals is, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I think so. If you're wanting to get a new player in, they should be able to look at a rule book and look at their fighter cards and the cards that come with their fighter cards and have an idea of how to play the game. I don't think it certainly increases the difficulty of entry when you start having to download PDFs or pull up something on your phone to understand the specifics of how something works. But I'm like you. I think that the Inspire steps just tighten the game up and it makes it consistent across all the warbands. So it would be cool to maybe see them update the Rivals errata to include, the additional Inspire steps. But other than that, I don't know that there's much else that really needs that much clarification. I'm sure that there are some nuggets in there that probably get missed, but
yeah, I'm sure there are certain cards that could use it, but yeah, I like the simplicity of it.
Yeah. And for anyone that's not familiar, FAR means Forsaken and Restricted. And so this is common in a lot of card games where popular cards or overpowered cards or confusing cards are either removed from play or are added to a list that you can only take a select number from. So as we kind of expand this Rivals format in our own local community, I'm sure that we'll dig into maybe like a Rivals Plus format or the Championship format itself. But for the time being, we're going to focus on the Rivals format, in which the FAR doesn't really do anything. There are no Forsaken or Restricted cards in the Rivals format. Yep. I think that covers that. So I think the only thing that really is worth talking about before we start digging into the actual warbands is the difference between Warhammer Underworlds and the seasons themselves. So if you go into your Games Workshop store, you can buy the Warhammer Underworlds 2-player starter set, which comes with the Storm of Celestus and Drepur's Wraithcreepers, which is the next two warbands that we'll talk about. But you could also buy Warhammer Underworlds Harrow Deep, which is the current season of Warhammer Underworlds. And it adds some new rules. We've talked about those rules in our other reviews. There's the delve mechanic, where all of the objectives are hidden at the start of the game as gloom tokens, and then you can move on to them and then delve them, which means they flip and turn into objectives, which changes how some of the war bands are able to behave, how they're able to act. But for the most part, the rules are otherwise the same as far as, the number of activations, how you play cards, all of that stuff. So I just think it's worth noting that as this game continues, the Warhammer Underworld starter set will be evergreen, and then the seasonal rules will change as, the next season box is released.
Yeah. Really, to kind of relate it maybe to a newer player coming in from another tabletop game, think of it as a war zone in 40K, right? Like there's you're playing within a war zone of 40K, so there's a little additional rules, maybe to the map, the terrain, the setting, and that's kind of like what the season is. Like there are typically mechanics or flavorful items that add to the season, and that's what Harrow Deep is.
Yep. Cool. Well, that covers that. So we will take our usual break, and when we come back, we will talk about the Storm of Celestus and Drepur's Wraithcreepers. Welcome back. We are here to talk about the Storm of Celestus and Drepur's Wraithcreepers. So we will start with the Storm of Celestus. This is one of the 2 warbands in the Warhammer Underworld's 2-player starter set. And so we'll start. We'll go through the same format we did last time. We're going to talk about the fighters. We'll talk about some key cards, objectives, gambits, and upgrades. We'll run through board choices, playstyle for the warband, what you want to do if you're playing against them, and give our new player rating. So with that, we'll just jump right in. So the Storm of Celestus is another Stormcast Eternals warband. There are 4 fighters in this warband. There are 3 Stormcast Eternals, and then a bird dog. The name of which...
Sleek?
No, Sleek is his name, but I can't remember what they're called. Gryph-hound. He's a Gryph-hound.
Oh, Gryph-hound,
yeah. So what's interesting about this warband is that it is the first one that we've reviewed that has a pet that can hold objectives. So Sleek can actually hold objectives, whereas some of the other animals in the other warbands were unable to. But they have a standard Stormcast stat block, 3 move, 1 block, 4 health. The bird is 4 health, 4 move.
No, he's 3 health, 4 move, and 1 dodge.
There it is. 3 health, 4 move, 1 dodge, 3 health. The cool thing about this warband is that they have a focus on ranged attacks. So this is something that we've seen before in the long past of Warhammer Underworlds, but it's pretty novel in the current season. They all have Thunderhead Greatbows, so a range 3, 2 smash attack for 2 damage, and then they each have a melee attack that the leader, Celestus, his does 2 damage at first. The other 2, they do 1 damage. And then they inspire whenever they make a successful attack action with their Thunderhead Greatbow. When they inspire, Celestus gets, he goes to 2 shields, 2 block on his defense, and then the other 2 fighters get 2 damage on their melee attack. And then they all get specific abilities if they are holding objectives when inspired. So Celestus cannot be driven back. Aphis can reroll 1 dice in his defense rolls when he's on an objective, and Melisande gets +1 range to their fighters' attack actions if they're holding an objective.
+1 dice, not range.
+1 dice.
+1 dice.
Thanks. I'm sitting here reading the card. I don't know why I said that.
It's all good.
Yep. So Sleek is uninspired. He's got a 3 Fury, 1 damage attack. It stays 3 Fury, 1 damage, but he gains Ensnare. He gets 1 more move and 1 more dodge on defense when inspired. He inspires if he makes a successful attack. But his key ability is his reaction called Warning Cry. And it says this fighter can only make this reaction once per phase. Use this after an enemy fighter's declare attack action step if the enemy fighter is within 2 hexes of this fighter. If you do, give 1 guard token to each friendly fighter within 1 hex. So what you can do is you can huddle Sleek close to your other fighters so that if somebody comes in to do a charge, you can put all of your fighters on guard. And it's a pretty critical maneuver, both for playing the warband and for playing against the warband. And we'll talk about that later. So I think that's it for the fighters themselves. Jason, you want to jump into some objectives?
Sure. A keynote here for the objectives is a lot of them trigger and score off of holding objectives. So some of them are good, but you're going to have to work really hard given the fact that in Harrow Deep, everything starts as a gloom. So it definitely can be a challenge. But I want to start with Bold Claim. So Bold Claim is a score immediately surge card. So you score this immediately after an opponent's activation if your warband holds 2 or more of the following objectives: 1, 3, or 5. So it's hold 2, and this is a little different. We haven't seen this before, where the trigger is after an opponent's activation. Typically, it's after an activation step, so it's really cool that it's after your opponent's. But it's a surge that scores 2 glory. So if you can pull this off, it's a quick score to get some upgrades. But again, working to get those 2 objectives, you actually have to move on them and delve them, and then hold them through the whole opponent's activation to get it.
Yep. Yeah, so I mean, it makes it interesting, and this is where the difference between standard Warhammer Underworlds and the current season Harrow Deep kind of makes playing things a little different. So next we have Here We Stand, and so this is an end phase objective. It's for 1 glory, and it says score this in an end phase if your warband holds 2 or more objectives. So the numbers don't matter. You just need to be on 2 objectives in the end phase, and you get 1 glory. So it's kind of doing what your warband wants to do anyway. Pretty easy to set up with 4 fighters. So it's an easy one to get some glory to get you started going into the next round.
Yeah. And then the last one I'd like to call out is Zone of Banishment. This is a score in the end phase if there are no enemy fighters in your territory. So early game, this could be really good. Maybe they just send 1 fighter across and you're able to push them out or take them out of action. Later game, it gets a little more difficult as fighters will probably be all mixed up. But still, scoring it for 2 glory in any end phase, I think it makes it a solid score.
Yeah, that's a good choice. So, Jason mentioned this before, that their objectives are around holding objectives. So I think it's worth mentioning there's another 2 glory for hold 2, but you have to be holding 2 and 4. And then they have another 1 glory surge that if you hold 2 or 4. But again, these are we didn't really want to put them at the top of the list because with the delve mechanic, it makes it harder to be able to pull them off. So with that, we'll move on to the gambits. The first gambit we want to call out is Etheric Channeling. This one's great. Play this only in an opponent's power step, so it kind of makes it easier for you to know when to play it. The first range 3 plus attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation has your pick of either +1 dice or cleave or ensnare. So you can dig into the accuracy there to make sure that you're going to get that successful Thunderhead Great Bow attack in order to inspire your fighter.
Yeah, it's really cool that you have 3 choices.
Yeah, I like that flexibility.
Right. The next one I'm going to go with Swift Step. What would be a warband review if we didn't talk about a push mechanic? So choose 1 friendly fighter, push that fighter 1 hex. Can definitely help you get on gloom or objective tokens. Can get you in range to shoot. But then it also has push that fighter up to 2 hexes instead of its sleek. So if it's the bird, you can really move him.
Yeah. And that goes great with his on-card reaction. You can get him in a position to be able to receive a charge or be close when a charge happens so that you can put your warband on guard, which is always nice. And the last one we want to call out is Great Bow Block. So it says play this only in your power step. Each time a friendly fighter other than Sleek is dealt damage in the next activation, reduce that damage to 1. So this is a super powerful card. Somebody could be applying a bunch of upgrades, playing a bunch of ploys to send a missile in to take out one of your 4 wound fighters in one shot, and then you play this card and suddenly all of that effort is for nothing because unless they go after the bird, they're not going to take anybody out.
Yeah, and in Rivals, this is even more important because as we've discussed, there's not a lot of +1 damage upgrades. So the fact that your 4 wound fighters, most damage out there is 2. This means that they have to attack and successfully hit one of your Stormcasts 3 times to kill them.
Yeah.
So really, really good card.
Oh.
Onto the objectives, though.
Upgrades?
Oh, yeah, upgrades. Yes, killing it. Upgrades. The first and foremost, with that great segue that should have been there, is they do have a +1 damage upgrade for +1 damage to range 1 fighters range 1 attack actions. So this warband definitely needs this late game, only being able to do 2 damage really across the board if they're inspired. It's great, and it can go on any fighter. So
yeah. So I mean, you could even give it to Sleek if you needed him to have 2 damage. So that one's good. Another one that we like is long ranged. So this is +1 range to this fighter's Thunderhead Greatbow attack action. This is really nice because it allows you to make that attack from a safe position. Depending on the fighters that you're working with, or maybe be able to reach out and tag a fighter that your opponent thought was safe. So they were 4 away, they thought they were safe because the Thunderhead Greatbow is range 3. You plop this on, and now you get another opportunity to either do damage or inspire, or both.
And then for the third upgrade, it's actually kind of difficult to pick one in this warband because they are so objective focused for a lot of their cards. A lot of them just might not happen, right? So, and the other caveat they have is they have 3 upgrades that are exclusive to each of their Stormcast fighters. Each one of those cards is very good, but if that fighter is out of action, you just don't get to play that card. Probably the best for me would be Stoic Fortitude, which is +1 wound to the leader. But they also have Cool Head, which is a reroll to the one that has the bow going down up.
Melisande.
Melisande, yes. And then it is Cautious Advance is for Alphys or Aphis.
Aphis, probably.
Aphis, there you go. The Brave. He's the brave one.
Yeah.
Which is a push after an attack action, which is a great upgrade, but again, it's fighter specific.
Yep. What about boards?
Oh, boards. So boards for because you're so objective focused, I want to take board and 3 objectives, which is very rare. But I really want to make sure that, one, I can look at those objective tokens or those gloom tokens and see where the numbers are.
Yeah. And
then I want to pick a board where I can consolidate the feature hexes in the center, and I basically have everybody within 4 hexes or 3 hexes to provide supporting fighters, supporting fire, so my range can kind of touch out and hit anyone that charges, and to really leverage the reaction to put everybody on guard by Sleek. Yeah. So clumped up in the middle is where I want to be.
I like it.
What about their play style?
Yeah, so they're going to be flex, and so they're going to hold objectives and shoot their Thunderhead Greatbows. And then if somebody gets all the way in, you can melee them down to death. But you really want to focus on standing on objectives and maximizing your attack. So using pushes carefully, trying to use your positioning, making smart charges so that, you're drawing people into firing lanes, basically, so you can maximize those Thunderhead Greatbow attacks.
Protecting your territory. Sweet. So, I used to play them way back in the day. That was Direchasm. If I pull them out again, Jared, what are you going to do to take me down?
Yeah, so you really want to focus them down. I mean, I think that's kind of the general rule for elite warbands in anyway, is as soon as you take one fighter down, you've really, messed up that warband's ability to act and counteract against your warband. And then you want to make sure that your charges and attack actions don't happen within 2 hexes of Sleek, so that he doesn't get that free reaction and that free guard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems to be the way to do it. And,
play rating?
The play rating. So again, I think we've kind of hit this a lot where they are objective based. If it was not Harrow Deep, I'd probably put them in silver because they have a lot of utility cards to bounce around objectives. But the fact that right now you just don't have a lot of objectives on the board at the start of the game, I'm going to have to give them a bronze and a fairly low bronze because they're going to struggle at times.
Yeah, I mean, their stat blocks are good, their attacks are good, but the rest of their deck just doesn't function if the objectives aren't fully visible. So, cool.
Awesome.
Drepur's Wraithcreepers.
Drepur's Creepers up next. Wow. Here we go. Drepur's is a 4-fighter warband. It is a death warband, and a pretty cool one, if I may add. Those 4 fighters, you have 2, the leader, and kind of the second in the man, the drummer. They both have 2 dodge. The other 2 fighters start out at 1 dodge. And then all of them have very similar attacks. They're range 2 attacks for 2 smash, 2 damage, except the drummer. He is 3 fury for 1 damage. So pretty basic stat line. But really where this warband takes off is the drummer. He has a reaction. Use this after an opponent's power step. Choose one friendly fighter in friendly territory. Push that fighter 1 hex toward the nearest enemy. So with that range 2, you can definitely use those pushes to set up your attacks. And their inspire condition for the 3 other ghosts horses. They inspire if they start an activation 2 hexes away from an enemy fighter. So that push is key because it's like after your opponent's turn, going into your turn, you get them 2 away. You're going to inspire at the end of your activation. Because remember, even though you trigger it, it goes in the inspire step. So it's still going to inspire after. But you're going to definitely inspire. They become really good on inspire because the 2 other support people, they gain 2 dodge. They go to 4 move, and one of them gains cleave, which is Hackfell, and then Gordid. Grodrid, your mic's gone.
Rodrig.
There we go. That
there I
am. Very utility with cleave and ensnare. And then your leader, the Drepur Creeper himself, goes to 4 move, and then he gains a die, so he's on 3 smash, and he gets a reroll on his attack. So he is like one of the most accurate fighters we've seen in some time. So
yeah,
very, very powerful stat blocks.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
What about objectives?
Yeah, so some key objectives. I think the first one we want to call out is Ethereal Hunters. So this is a surge score immediately after an activation in which a friendly fighter made a charge action in which they move through 1 or more blocked and or occupied hexes. So you could either move through a blocked hex, you could move through one of your own fighters, you could move through an enemy fighter. But you just have to make a charge action. You don't need a successful attack. So we saw a very similar card come from Lady Heroes. This one pairs well with the Patrician to push, so you can get close, maybe even adjacent to the fighter that you want to charge anyway. So it's an easy way to move through that blocked or occupied hex.
Yeah, it's a pretty easy score. The next one I want to talk about is Deathly Blooms. This is an end phase score. So if you're in the end phase, your warband holds 1 or more objectives in enemy territory, you're going to get a glory. The nice thing here is because they are a dodge warband, you kind of want to be in those gloom hexes anyway. So it's just kind of like, oh, I get an additional defensive buff. And then as we get to the end of the round, I flip it over and I score a glory. Oh, and by the way, I'm still probably reaching you because I have 2 range on my attack actions.
Yep.
So solid card.
That's good. That's a good one. And then the last objective we want to call out is another surge. Score this immediately after an activation, which a friendly fighter made an attack action with 1 or more supporting fighters. So with that push, with their ability to move through blocked hexes, occupied hexes, the move 4 once they're inspired, it's pretty easy to get some supporting fighters as you are, setting up your attacks.
And all these gambit pushes we're going to talk about
these gambit pushes right now.
Right now. So the first one, we'll just call it out, Drifting Death. Choose up to 2 fighters, push each, two friendly fighters, push each chosen fighter 1 hex closer to the nearest enemy.
Yep.
Wow. Up to 2 a nearest enemy. Give me Inspired. Give me a free attack.
Yep.
Ready, set, go.
Love it. The next one we want to call out is Horrifying Shriek. Choose 1 enemy fighter within 3 hexes of 1 or more friendly fighters. Push the chosen fighter 1 hex. So it could be away or it could be towards. So now they're within 2 hexes, and you can inspire and get a free attack. Seems like there's a theme here.
There's a theme. And then, if that attack wasn't enough, we'll go with Methodical Attacks, because if you failed that attack action, play this card as a reaction. In which a friendly fighter made a failed attack action, that fighter makes an attack action.
Nice. So not only are you getting attacks without having to charge, but if you miss, you can just attack again.
Yay! But it couldn't get any better, right? Like, that is all we got. We got really good objectives. We got really good gambits. Upgrades, like, though, they're terrible, right?
Oh yeah, they're awful. Like, I mean, who wants Bitter Strength, which is +1 damage to this fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack actions?
Wow. I mean,
so now any of your fighters can go to 3 damage.
That's pretty amazing.
But wait, there's more. Do you need more damage, Jason?
No, I don't. I don't.
No,
sure? Maybe I do, because I'm going to upgrade Murder Pack, and that's +1 damage to this fighter's range 1 or range 2 attacks if this fighter has 1 or more supporting fighters, and then that model with this upgrade has +1 dice to other friendly fighters' attack actions if they are supporting the attack.
Oh.
Wow.
Nice.
So you could get somebody to either 4 damage or 3 or 4 dice with all those pushes.
Yep.
Man, it's good stuff.
It is good stuff.
That can't be it, though, right?
I mean, we wish, right? So arguably one of the best upgrades in the game.
It's very strong.
So this is Pall of Fear, and it is -1 dice from enemy fighters' range 1 and range 2 attack actions that target this fighter to a minimum of 1. So a lot of the -1 dice mechanics that exist in the game outside of this warband are restricted to range 1 attack actions or attack actions from an adjacent fighter or something like that. But this also hits anything that's range 2, which... if you're in the mirror match, let's say, now you have decreased the accuracy of your opponent with all of their range 2 attacks. It's a pretty good resiliency card.
It is. It's one of the best. So we talked about that. What's the board? So if you're picking a board for them, what do you want?
Blocked hexes, lethal hexes, both. Well, not lethal hexes, right? They can get damaged by lethal hexes.
Yes, they can move through lethal hexes, but if they're pushed into lethal hexes,
no, they're intangible, but they don't have the other one. So it says when this fighter makes a move action, it can move through blocked and occupied hexes. It must move its move in an empty hex, so they don't have the lethal hex immunity. So don't do lethal hexes, but definitely do blocked hexes.
Yes,
so that you can score ethereal hunters more easily and also kind of hide from your opponent a little bit.
Yeah, take away that range attack if need be.
Yep.
And then honestly, with their push mechanic, like, it really doesn't matter where you set up because you'll eventually get to where you want to go. So
you'll get there. Play style, Jason?
I think I'm just gonna sit in the back and just do nothing.
I mean, hold some objectives in enemy territory.
Yes.
Wait a minute.
So I think for Rivals, they are a really, really good aggro warband that wants to hold objectives in enemy territory. We obviously didn't go over all the objectives, but there are a lot of objectives with this warband that are just going to stack as you get more kills while being on objectives. So get the fighters pushed into enemy territory, start really capitalizing on your activations and the multiple attacks you're going to get without having to charge, and just start chopping people up, and the glory will come.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So aggro, I guess I didn't say
aggro plus hold objectives in enemy territory.
There we go.
Because they have some objectives for that around holding objectives in enemy territory. So.
Yep.
Cool.
What kind of medal are we giving them?
Well, before we give them a medal, we should probably talk about what to do if you're playing against them. I mean, there really is no hope, so it's probably not really even worth talking about, but we should probably do it anyway.
I guess. All right. So counters.
Yeah. So try not to feed them kills, right? Like everybody does 2 damage except for the patrician. Or everybody's range 2. They all do 2 damage. So, just throw in your more resilient fighters first. Maybe try to make one of them come to you more so that you can pile on attacks. So if you have like ranged fighters, you can make some ranged attacks first. The reality is that it is very difficult to stop the Inspire because the push happens after your power step. So you don't get to like push them away or push your own fighter away. It is after your power step has ended. So you don't have the opportunity to play any more gambits. And so it really just feels like you're always under pressure when you're fighting this warband. There's always somebody in your face. So try not to give them any easy extra glory.
Well said, yes.
Yep. All right, so now new player rating.
I always want to. I like the new player rating. I just skip.
No, it's good. It's important.
So I mean, obviously they're gold.
Yeah.
And definitely a high gold for our rivals players. Like they're really good in championship as well.
Yes.
They have like all the other gold ratings. They have basically everything you need in their rivals deck, with some really good inspiring mechanics.
Yep, I agree.
So that covers the starter. I guess we'll take a quick break and come back with the start of Direchasm.
Yep. Dread Pageant and Myari's Purifiers.
And we're back. And we're into the Direchasm. I am so excited to talk about these warbands. I love them all, even if they're not the greatest. But I think they are. So let's just dive right in with Myari's Purifiers. Jared, what kind of fighters do we have?
Yeah, so these are Lumineth Realm Lords. So these are Aels. Aels. So 4-fighter warband. Pretty basic stat blocks. They are all 3 health, and that comes into play later when we give our new player rating for them. Myari, Aelin, and Sinela are all 4 move. Myari is 1 dodge. Aelin is 1 block. Sinela is 1 dodge. And then we have Bahanar, aka the Ban Hammer, and he is 3 move, 2 block. And then it's a good mix of a warband. So you've got Myari, who's a caster. You've got Bahanar, who's got this big hammer. Aelin, who's got her greatsword, and Sinela, who's an archer. So you've got a wide range of attacks. But probably the most interesting thing about this warband is the new mechanic that they introduce, and it is the Aether Quartz mechanic. So at the start of the game, give each friendly fighter 1 Aether Quartz counter, and then these counters are used either as a reaction to an attack, defense, or casting roll, or they can be used by Gambit's employees to score objectives or do other things. But what they let you do on an attack, defense, or casting roll is re-roll 1 dice in that roll. And this is actually critical for this warband because it helps with their Inspire condition, which in fighters' attack, defense, or casting roll, the roll contains only successes. And so a lot of their attacks are on a low number of dice. So Myari has range 2, 1 smash for 2 damage. You're only rolling 1 die. You got a 50-50 chance of rolling a success. The attack or defense roll itself does not need to be successful. So if your opponent comes in and swings at you, go ahead and roll your defense dice because you may inspire. But you can use it for that. So Bahanar is great. 2 damage, 2 smash, range 2. Aelin is range 1, 2 smash, 2 damage. And then Sinela has a bow, range 3, 2 smash, 1 damage. And that has cleave and Grievous. It doesn't call it Grievous on this card, but on a critical hit, it does 1 additional damage. And then it has a lofted mode. The same bow is range 4, 2 smash, 1 damage. when they inspire, they actually get a lot better. So Myari gets 2 smash, 2 damage on his melee attack, but his spell attack goes to 2 damage. Bahanar goes to 3 damage, and then Aelin goes to 2 block on defense, and goes to 3 smash and cleave on her sword, and then Sinela continues with the original attack, 2 smash, 1 damage with cleave and Grievous, and then the lofted attack goes to range 5. So you got a lot of versatility. There's a lot going on these fighter cards, but they function well. They all serve their purpose. Yeah.
So just one correction, if it happened, Myari is on 2 dodge. I think we said 1, so just 2 dodge.
2 dodge, yes.
Which is important for that fighter. And the token management is for the Ether Quartz is important because it plays into the deck as well. So not only is it to get those rerolls, but there's a lot of their cards that function off of that. So it's just an additional layer that you have to manage.
Right.
But remember, if you're gonna die, just spend it and reroll.
Right. Yep. Because you can't reroll it if you're dead.
That's right.
So even if the odds are low, it would be better to maybe try to meet those odds than it would be to die.
There we go.
Right. Key objectives, Jason.
Yeah, so right into those Ether Quartz tokens. Elemental Blessing. This one's a surge and it's a hybrid, so you can score it immediately if you remove an Ether Quartz counter from a friendly fighter when you resolve an elemental ploy, which we'll get to in the ploy section, or your warband casts its second or subsequent spell in the same phase for 1 glory. But it's an easy score if you have that Ether Quartz to spend and get off the elemental ploy. Bam, done. Cool.
Yep, I like it. So the next one we want to call out is Purifying Light. So this is an in phase. Score this in an in phase if your leader holds an objective. Pretty easy to do. You just walk Myari onto a Gloom Hex, and then in the last power step, you just delve it, and boom, 1 glory.
Yep. And you're getting all those benefits of defense while you're just chilling with your range attack.
That's right.
The last one we want to kind of point out is the Pursuit of Excellence. Score this in the end phase if 1 or more friendly fighters each have 3 or more upgrades. So you need one of your friendly fighters to have 3 upgrades, and you get 2 glory.
It's actually very good. Jason will tell you, every time I have played against him using the Purifiers, every time he scores this card, I get so frustrated because this card exists in championship format and it exists in other rivals decks, but in every other instance, it is worth 1 glory. So it's really frustrating to watch your opponent score 2 glory for the same thing that you just scored 1 glory for.
That's fine.
Anyway, moving on to gambits. So there are 4 elemental ploys in this deck. They are Channel the Mountain, Channel the River, Channel the Wind, and Channel the Zenith. We will talk about 2 of them, but these are the elemental ploys that you would have to remove Ether Quartz tokens for in order to score Elemental Blessing. So Channel the River. This is choose 1 friendly fighter. You can remove that fighter's Ether Quartz counters. If you do, push that chosen fighter up to 3 hexes. Otherwise, meaning you did not remove that fighter's Ether Quartz counters, push the chosen fighter 1 hex. So it's your standard push ploy. We would be remiss in our Rivals Warbands review if we did not call out a push card. So Channel the River, that's our first one. What's next, Jason?
So Channel the Wind. And the other cool thing about these ploys are if you don't have the Ether Quartz counter, like there's still a condition that they'll work. So it's really cool that is built in there, but you will not score Elemental Blessing the easy way. So, but anyway, Channel the Wind. Choose 1 friendly fighter. You can remove that fighter's Ether Quartz counters. If you do, deal 1 damage to up to 2 enemies within 2 hexes. That's 2.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, 2 enemies and a damage. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Or otherwise, just deal 1 damage to enemy fighters within to 1 enemy fighter within 2 hexes. So you're going to get some plink damage. You might be able to do 2.
Yeah. Which is good because, as we talked about, they're a lot of 2 damage. So you hit you could hit them for 2 and then stack 1 more damage on there and take a fighter out of action. The last gambit that we want to call out is Surety of Purpose. This is +1 damage to the first attack action made as part of a charge action by a friendly fighter in the next activation. So notice there's no range limitation on this. So you could actually do it with Sinela to get a 2 damage bow attack. You could do it with Myari to get a 3 damage spell attack. Banhammer, when he's inspired, can do 4 damage. Just have to charge.
Yeah, I really like that one.
It's good.
But moving on to the upgrades, I'm gonna skip the first one because I know you really like
those cards.
Like that one. I'm gonna go right to Mountain's Gift. So this one, if this fighter has 1 or more Ether Quartz counters, this fighter is on guard. Otherwise, after this fighter's attack action that takes an enemy fighter out of action, give this fighter 1 guard token. So really, if you have the Ether Quartz, you're on guard, which is really good if it's on Myari. It's good on anyone, but definitely good on that fighter. But again, if you don't have the counter, there is a way to activate the card without it.
Yep. Yeah, that's really good. So Myari on guard in a Gloom Hex can only fail on single sports. It's pretty good. All right, so I talked about how each of the fighters only has 3 wounds. So this is part 1 of this coming into play. They have an upgrade called Heartstone Amulet. When this fighter is dealt damage, reduce that damage by 1 to a minimum of 1. So if they're getting hit by damage to attacks, what would have taken them out in 2 now takes them out in 3. So add some resilience to fighters that do not have a high wound pool. It's pretty good.
It's fun. And then the last one is that we want to talk about is Heightened Reflexes. So it just gives you +1 move, which can take, I believe, them up to 5, yeah. But then this card also has a reaction. So use this after an enemy fighter's attack action. Remove this fighter's Ether Quartz counters. If you do, this fighter makes an attack action that targets that enemy fighter. Then discard this card. The key point here being is it doesn't have to be an attack action that targeted this fighter. You just have to be able to be in range to attack that enemy that made an attack action. Yep. So it's really cool to make an out of activation attack, especially with the range that this warband has. You can get some use out of it.
Yep, it's good. I like it. So that covers upgrades. So for boards, you want to be in the middle of the board somewhere. You don't want to be right up in front. That low health pool is not ideal to be just soaking attacks. You really want to pick your engagements. So try to line things up, maybe offset the board. And of note, we didn't call these out, but you really only need 2 objectives for this warband for some of the objectives that they have to score. They do have 1 objective that requires you to hold 3, but it would be better to have any fighters alive and not score that objective, but be able to hold 2 than it would be to maybe get that and then all of your fighters die because you're overexposed. So.
Yeah, definitely. Pick the engagements.
Yep. What do you think about playstyle, Jason?
What we had. Oh yeah, playstyle was before counters. I always want. Yep.
You were so excited about countering.
Boom, counters, ratings. I always want to be one ahead. So playstyle, I think that they are flex. You want to kind of to hold back, pick your engagements, hold some objectives. They truly are a flex warband, and with a cool element of that token management. You definitely don't want to be overly aggressive with them with their low health. They will fold quickly, and then just really pick your battles and score the glory where you can.
I like it.
Now, counters. How did you beat me when I played them?
I just killed all your fighters. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it, especially with if you're talking rivals format, there's not a lot of options for pushing enemy fighters around. So it's going to be hard to stop you from standing on 2 objectives unless I just get rid of all of your fighters. But you want to limit your opponent's rolls so that you don't get more and more opportunities for them to inspire, because as long as they get successes on their defense rolls or attack rolls, they get that chance to inspire. And if you can, you want to try to focus down Myari or Bahanar. Bahanar is a tough target though, with that 2 block. So if you got an early cleave, or you can just dump a lot of dice into a single attack to try to out crit him, that's gonna serve you well.
Yeah, pick those attacks, right? Don't give them free dice rolls to give them the inspires.
Yeah,
the inspire chances, I should say. So when you go in, make sure you're doing 3. The other thing for newer players is Bahanar. If you can kind of get him souped up and really push him around, he can really be a beast in this warband. Yeah. He has some really good fighter specific upgrades, and some gambits can really do work if you can push him around.
Yeah. If he can start to attack without having to move or charge, he can do a lot of work. He'd be the linchpin of the warband. All right, Jason.
Is it rating time?
It is rating time. What do you want to rate them?
I think they're a fun warband. I've enjoyed them, but they're definitely a silver just because of their wounds pool. I mean, with 3 wounds on all the fighters, they do die rather easily, and the extra element of having to manage those tokens, not only to give you something for your fighters, but to leverage your cards.
Yep. Yeah, I'd agree. That silver sounds good for me. They are. It was always fun to play against them, and it seemed like you had fun playing them. So, and I think silver. I mean, I don't want to sell silver short. I think silver is like kind of the ideal, where it's not perfect. It's not an auto take. That there's some nuance there. There's some choice to be made there.
Yeah, I think for you and I, like, silver is kind of like there's a puzzle to be solved. They can win against anyone, but you have to think about it.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. So that'll take us to, man, I don't know. I could basically intro every warband in Direchasm as Jason's favorite Direchasm warband, because you really do love them all.
I do love them.
But I think this might be your favorite, like your actual favorite.
Yeah, I would say in this season in Direchasm, this would be my actual favorite in Championship. It was funny because when they came out, I didn't think I was going to like them, but they are my ultimate play style. But oddly enough, I don't play them.
You haven't played them in a while.
Yeah, I tend to stay away from them because I have one style, right? Like in our group. Yeah. Like everyone knows I'm like the hold 2, like I want to push you with push cards and keep you away, like the control style. So I really have not played them a lot the back half of the season, but doing this review, I don't know if I'm going to stay away.
Are you feeling the lure of Slaanesh?
I am, sir. I am.
Well, why don't you run us through the fighter cards for the Dread Pageant, Jason?
Yeah, so the unique thing with this warband here is it's a 4-fighter warband, but they're all really unique, and they don't really have a lot of similarities other than they're all 4 move. But the leader Vasilik, that he has 4 health, 1 block, and has a range 2 attack action with 2 smash for 2 damage. And then you have Hadzu, which is an archer, so 3 fury, 1 damage. But the cool thing that fighter has is instead of drive back after the attack action, you can push them. You can push that fighter, so it gets around kind of like guard shenanigans, or a fighter, if that can't be driven back, you can still kind of manipulate where that fighter ends up after the attack action. So really cool there. That fighter, Hadzu, only has 2 wounds. And then there is Glissette.
The best a man can get.
That is correct. And probably one of my favorite fighters in all of Underworlds, because she has a great mechanic that this fighter is always on guard. So she is always on guard, and she starts on 2 dodge, which means that she's on 2 block and 2 dodge. She is only 2 wounds, so she is fragile. I think you can never kill her, but Jared always seems to prove me wrong. You get her on a Gloom Hex, and she is really resilient as far as a success on the dice. Her attack is 2 range, but 2 fury, uninspired, but for 2 damage. So can definitely, yeah, I like it. It's one of my favorites. And then last but not least, we have the Cowboy Slake Slash, like cow dark god beast.
He's a Slangor. He is a Slanesh aligned beast man.
It's a really cool model. He has a big crab claw.
He does have a big crabby claw.
But Slake Slash, he 3 fury for 2 damage, but the big thing here is 5 wounds, so a 5 wound fighter. And then the warband has, well, first off, the leader, Vasilic, and Slake Slash have a reaction, which is kind of needed for the inspire mechanic of the warband. So reaction during the fighter's attack action after the deal damage step. You pick one. You deal 1 damage to this fighter, or you heal 1 this fighter. So you're basically putting wound counters on yourself or taking wound counters off of yourself after an attack action that you get to the deal damage step, right? So you need that because to inspire the warband, all fighters combined on the board have to have 6 wound counters. Doesn't matter if it's your enemy or you, just 6 wound counters, and you inspire. And when you inspire, Vasilic goes to 3 damage for 5 move and gains cleave. Slake Slash gets another die, so he goes to 4 fury, which is a super accurate attack on 5 move. Hadzu goes to range 4 and gets an extra dodge. Glacette now becomes accurate, getting 3 fury for 2, and also a scything attack, again going to 5 move. But the Inspire is difficult. There's that little back and forth game you have to play with the reaction that honestly, when I play the Warband, I forget a lot about. But it's a cool mechanic, just hard to manage.
Yep.
So
yeah, I'd agree.
Any objectives?
No, there are no objectives.
There's none.
Yeah. No, so I really like their objective deck. It's very flexible as far as kind of what you can do. There's a lot of hybrid, so you can either do this or that, which is really cool because you can get some flexibility in your playstyle. The first one that we do want to call out actually is not a hybrid though, and it is Endless Revel. This is a surge. Score this immediately after an activation if each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more move and or charge tokens. It's pretty straightforward to play out at any point in the game. So if it's the first activation, it's probably going to take you until, the 4th activation to score it. But let's say you're in the second action phase and you only have 2 fighters left alive. Well, as soon as both of those fighters have move or charge tokens, you get to score this card. And Jason has definitely scored it in the 3rd action phase with 1 fighter several times for me.
Yeah.
So that's good. It's a good one.
You can control it, so it is good.
Yep.
The next one I want to talk about is Access of Avidity. Score this in the end phase if your warband holds more objectives than any other warband in Harrow Deep. This is fairly easy. We see it in Championship a lot in some other cards with dominant position and whatnot. But the fact that you can just hold 1 objective, the feature tokens don't start as objectives, so you can control flipping them. And then if your opponent does get on objectives, I think my Gambits are going to be able to take care of that. So for 2 glory, this is a fantastic card.
Yeah. And then the next one keys right into it, Excess of Indolency. Hybrid, score this in an end phase if there are no enemy fighters with any move or charge tokens, which you could kind of control if you target all their fighters that have moved or charged, or the other way to score it is your warband holds 2 or more objectives. So by a lot more
too.
Yep, it's a lot easier to control.
That is hold 2. I love it.
Yep.
I mean that's 5 glory or 4 glory just based on objectives. 5 glory that's really easy to control. within the deck already. Another thing to note about objectives, just because I think it's really funny, is like the total glory for this objective deck is 22. Now that does include a card that's worth 6 glory and Beautiful Deaths that you're probably never going to score, but just the fact that it has such a high glory ceiling is rather interesting to me. But moving on to gambits, because this is where rubber really hits the road. Some of the best gambits. Jared?
So Dark Desires, once again, we'd be remiss if we didn't call it a push card. So Dark Desires, choose one enemy fighter. The chosen fighter's player must pick one. Give that fighter 1 move token, or you push that fighter 1 hex. So either I get to move you out of position, or you don't get to move for the rest of the action phase. So, yeah, have fun with that horrible choice.
Yeah, it's really like a utility card. I mean, like, man, I get to push you where you don't want to be, or that move token is just so ouch.
Yeah.
Next one would be Shared Pain, and I really want to take time to explain this one, because this is one for if you're not playing Dread Pageant, you need to be very aware of Shared Pain. So it's a reaction card. Play this during an enemy fighter's attack action that targets a friendly fighter. After the determined success step, when resolving the deal damage step, choose one friendly fighter within 3 hexes of the target. That fighter, rather than the target, is dealt the damage from the attack action. Then the combat sequence ends. So there's no drive back, nothing else. There's no reaction. It just ends, right? This is an extremely powerful card, especially if you bait somebody out there like Lisette and the attack goes through and Slake Slash is just sitting a couple hexes behind her, and then you can Slake Slash will take the damage. So someone comes in, they think their plan is very, very solid and trying to take out a fighter, and you just totally control that engagement. Very, very fun for me, not so fun for you.
No, and I like the flip side of it too. So imagine tooling up a fighter to do 4 damage. They come in and they try to kill Vasilak, and you just throw 4 damage onto Hadzu.
Yeah.
Like, sorry, Hadzu, but
you're gone.
Yeah, and now your opponent has spent all of these resources, and they're likely right in Vasilak's face. So
swing away.
Could be bad. And then the last one, we alluded to it. This is the Lure of Slaanesh and Shock of Shocks. It is another push card. So choose one fighter.
Any fighter.
Push the chosen fighter 1 hex, or up to 1 hex for each surviving friendly fighter with 1 or more wound counters. So if your warband is damaged, you can push your fighter or an enemy fighter around a bunch, but you always get to push 1. It's your fighter or an enemy fighter. So
it is.
Good luck holding those objectives to your opponents.
Give me the pushes.
All right, upgrades.
So for upgrades, I'm gonna go to just your favorite card, Sickening Resilience.
Oh gosh, I hate this card.
So it doesn't always go off, but when it goes off,
it's huge awesome. Deal.
So when it's an upgrade, when this fighter is dealt damage, roll 1 defense dice. On a roll of a shield, this fighter is dealt only 1 damage.
Yep.
So
painful.
Yeah, I got a 1/3 chance to get out of the damage you want to deal me.
No, it's good. And it fits into that control where you're really preventing your opponent from doing what they want to do.
Yes.
Yeah, right there with Shared Pain. So the next one we want to talk about is Distracting Ostentation. And this is -1 dice from attack actions made by enemy fighters adjacent to this fighter to a minimum of 1. So we saw, the better version of this in Drepur's Wraithcreepers. But, you throw a fighter in, have them stand next to somebody, and now they're rolling 1 fewer dice on their attack actions, which reduces accuracy, which means they're less likely to damage you, which means you stay alive.
And the last one we want to talk about is Strength from Pain. So this is a +1 damage to this fighter's range 1, range 2 attack actions if this fighter has 1 or more wound counters. So not just straight up +1 damage like we've seen before, but the fact that there are cards in, Gambit cards that can control whether you're damaged or not. This is really good for the warband because they do need the additional damage on their fighters to make it work.
Yep.
So that's the upgrades we want to talk about. Boards, Jared, you want to talk about boards?
Yeah. So, I mean, your favorite thing to do was to either offset or longboard me. So what I probably want to do that. You only need 2 objectives. So if you lose the roll off, or if you win the roll off, you can opt to only take 2 objectives, so that you get to control that engagement. And you really want to control your engagement. You want to make sure that you're setting up, your fighters so that, only the fighters that you want to get attacked can be attacked. And then for the Inspire condition / for the things that require you to be damaged, maybe grab a board with 1 lethal hex. I mean, it's a risk, but it might be worth it in the end.
Yeah.
But you really do want to control that engagement. So, push your fighters to the back. You can prevent your opponent from scoring, and you can score your 4 glory for just sitting on objectives. I mean, that may be enough to win you the game.
It may be.
It's not enough it's not very fun to play against.
No.
But at the end of the day, it is about the glory.
Yeah.
Play style, Jason?
Yeah, so we've said it a bunch of times, and this is probably the only warband in Rivals that we could call control, which is, it's a little bit different for newer players. Control means that you are actively trying to deny and manipulate the board state so that your opponent cannot do what they want to do. And given their gambits, upgrades, and just the fighters they have, this is probably the only warband that comes close. It's not full-on control like we'll see in Championship, but is as close to, with being able to push the damage, push the fighters, become more resilient, and then you want to control 2 objectives. So I really like that control to flex playstyle in Championship, and they carry over into Rivals.
Works out well.
So how are you taking me down?
I'm being aggressive. Hadzu's a wet noodle. If you can stack dice in your favor, Glissette is also a wet noodle. If you stack dice and you just out critter, right? Like there's a good chance that you're not going to beat her on a straight roll. But if you can out critter, if you can throw cleave or ensnare in there, it'll go a long way. We called the card out, but you want to be mindful of shared pain. Know that there is a chance that you could stack a fighter to go in and kill Vasilak or even Slake Slash, and that damage just gets thrown to another fighter to mess you up. So,
yeah, I'll give our players one other nugget, and this can apply to other warbands and really in Harrow Deep. It's really important. So Jared alluded to board selection and the fact that I want to offset you or longboard you. But what that does is it gives you the first opportunity to place a feature token. So really be mindful where you place that first feature token, where you want to lock out a second placement for myself if I'm playing Dread Pageant. So that placement you want to make sure is put in a place that you can reach with your fighters, and you're going to give him one objective placement in the back of his board, but that first one can lock him out of the front of the board and make me have to come up and play that objective, which can be critical to disrupting my plan and having opportunities to take out fighters. And really don't worry about that back objective, right? Like, worry about the one you can reach.
Right. Yeah. I mean, when you're fighting against the Dread Pageant, they will have one objective that they can get where they want. So, like Jason said, make sure all of the other objectives are within your reach so that you can control them. Jason, I know what rating you want to give them, but what rating should you give them?
So I think they're silver for rivals and a new player. There is a lot to go through here, and being a controlled warband, you really have to understand what the opponent is trying to do to you. I do think that their rivals deck is pretty solid based on it all, but the complexity of the Inspire, given that it is a control warband, I think they land solidly in silver.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Sweet. So that's 4 down.
4
6
down.
to go.
6 to go.
Sweet. So we'll take a break, and when we come back, we will cover Khagra's Ravagers and the Starblood Stalkers. And we're back, and we are here to cover the next set of Direchasm warbands, Khagra's Ravagers and Starblood Stalkers. And we will kick things off with those Agents of Chaos, the Deliverers of Desecration, Khagra and her Ravaging warband.
That was quite the intro.
I like spicing it up.
I don't know how much desecration they're going to do in Harrow Deep, but hey, we'll give them a shot. So the Ravagers are a 4-fighter warband. You have the leader, Khagra. You have a caster, Zarshia Razik, who is an all-around good guy, and Dower Kragan. So they all have 3 move. They're all on 1 block to start. 3 of them have 4 wounds. The caster, Zarshia, has 3 wounds. But Khagra, the leader, she starts out with 3 damage, so that's pretty big. She has a 2 smash attack. And then Razik is on 2 smash for 2 damage, and Dower Kragan's on 3 fury for 2 damage. So not bad stat lines. The caster basically has 1 damage attacks, whether it's a melee or a spell cast. There is a weird action on her spell casting, as it is on 2 channels, so it's very easy to get off. But if she does fail that spell attack action, you do suffer backlash, which just makes it great. No,
so good.
Damaging yourself with the 3-wound fighter is not good. But anyway, really good stats out the gate for them. But that's really where it kind of runs its course. So the 3 move will be a liability for you early game. It's kind of hard to get across the board at 3 move. And then really their Inspire mechanic is difficult. Now, it is a key note that they have been changed to 2 desecration tokens. So if you purchase the warband, their cards will say 3 desecration tokens, but it has been errataed to 2, which is kind of important because in Harrow Deep they're going to struggle to inspire anyway. So the Inspire, when you have 2 or more desecration tokens on the battlefield, and there you have 2 ways on their fighter cards to get desecration tokens. First is a reaction. If you take someone out of action with an attack action, and you're standing on an objective token, or they're standing on an objective token, you can place a desecration token. Again, in Harrow Deep, that's going to be very difficult. Or they have, some of them, Razik and Dower Kragan, have the spoil mechanic, where if they're holding an objective at the end of the action phase, so the last activation right before the end phase, they can place a desecration token on that objective. And that's probably how you're going to have to get those desecration tokens out early game, unless someone just so happens to be standing on an objective and you can get Khagra across to beat them up. But once you have 2 desecration tokens on the board in the Inspire, Khagra goes to 2 block and 4 move, which is really, really good for her. Razik also gets 2 block, and he gets an extra die on his attack, so he goes to 3 smash. And then Dower Kragan gains cleave, again going to 4 move. And then your caster Zarshia, her ranged attack spell attack action goes to 2 damage, which is actually kind of vital. Like when I've played this warband, more times than not, she has really come into play later in the game as the 2 warbands kind of mingle and shake hands. She can really cast a really nice spell to take somebody out or take a 2-wound fighter out. So it can become vital. But again, like, they are very difficult to inspire because you have to be doing it to the objective side of the token. And again, it's probably just Razik and Direchasm that are getting you those despoils early game to try to get them inspired.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything, Jared?
No, I think you covered it. They are like you made this comment when we were prepping. They are some of the best models in Underworlds, I would say. Certainly in Direchasm, but probably across all of Underworlds. The models are they're really cool.
They are. I love to get mine on the table, and because the models are so awesome, I just wish they had a little better mechanic.
Yep, that's okay, because I mean, it won't be hero deep forever.
True.
So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Maybe there will be 7 objectives on the board in some future season. Who knows?
Well, and in the Rivals format that we're covering too, there are a lot of warbinds or a lot of objectives for holding objectives.
That's true.
So maybe you can make them work.
I think most warbands have something where they want to be on an objective. Anyway, speaking of objectives, cards, not tokens. Why don't we run through some of the key cards that we think are important for this warband? And when we talk about key cards, what we're talking about is these are the cards that you want to look for in your opening hand. So they're probably a little easier to control, a little bit better early game. And so if you don't have one or more of these cards in your objective hand when you draw it in that first turn, you can just ditch and try to draw into one of these. So the first one we want to cover is Brutal Desecration. And I know that this kind of goes against what Jason was just saying about getting Desecration tokens onto the battlefield. This is a surge. Score this immediately after your warband desecrates an objective. We're going to talk about some gambits in just a minute that help out with the situation a lot, but it's one that's fairly easy to do if you have the cards in hand, and it's pretty easy to score, and it moves you one step closer towards that inspire condition. What else, Jason?
Yeah, key there, cards in hand.
Cards in hand.
The next one is also going to function around the desecration mechanic. Excuse me. And that is Raised Realm. So score this in an end phase if there are 2 or more desecration tokens on the battlefield, like I talked about with Razik and Direchasm. Like, if you get them on objectives at the end of the action phase, they're going to place them down, and then you'll score this just for doing what they want to do is stand on those objectives at the end of a round. So fairly easy to score, and if you have that in your first hand, you can probably get a glory going into the end phase.
That's right. Yeah, works out nicely. And then the last one that we want to cover is Malevolent Exploits. This is a surge. Score this immediately after playing your 3rd or subsequent power card in a single power step. So this can sometimes cause you to make some plays that don't necessarily make sense, but it can also get you glory to get an upgrade on that you might not have been able to do. But this is any power card. So this could be a gambit, it could be a spell, it could be a ploy. Or an upgrade. So it's really any 3 power cards in a single power step, and then you'll score it, get that glory to get the train rolling. So, Sweet. What about gambits, Jason?
Well, we're just gonna stay on that desecration bandwagon. And probably one of the most important cards to them, and what kind of can really help you turn 1, is Ritual Desecration. So it's pick 1 objective token in the same hex as a friendly fighter, desecrate that objective token, and then that fighter is inspired. So not only are you getting a token out on the board, but you're inspiring a fighter instantly. And if you can set it up where you can push Khagra onto a token, flip it, and then play this, and now she's inspired.
Yeah.
Ready for business.
She goes 2 block, or Zarshia could be sitting there, now she's inspired and she can do 2 damage from range. It can work out really well. Speaking of pushing, anyone who's been listening to this series knows how much we love a push card. So they have Ravaging Advance. Push each friendly fighter that is not in enemy territory up to 1 hex towards enemy territory. So if you have this in hand, when you deploy your fighters, you can set them behind the feature tokens so that you push them onto the feature tokens, and then you can delve them to flip them into objectives as needed, and get things going in that way. Also, it gets your Chaos Warriors who really just want to beat people up closer to the people that they want to beat up. So that's always a bonus.
So, and then last would be Rack the Land, which this one is very, it's difficult to pull off in Harrow Deep because it's pick one objective token in an empty hex with one hex. Oh my lord, let's just start again on that.
Yeah.
Pick one objective token in an empty hex within one hex of one or more friendly fighters. Desecrate that objective. So this previously was a very, very good card for them. The point here being it has to be an empty hex and it has to be flipped to an objective token. So you may have to do a little work or have a target of opportunity where an objective token was left unflipped on the battlefield. But if that presents itself, or if you maybe move someone on, like let's say that you got Khagra inspired on one hex and you move Razik onto another hex and then you play the push card, and then you can just play Rack the Land, and then you get your desecration tokens out there, and bam, you're in business, because at the end of the activation, you're going to have two, you're going to be inspired. So this one takes a little more work, but again, you can see the theme is once they become inspired, like you really have a lot of punch and a lot of durability with the fighters. So, and your cards work better then. So,
yeah, that's true. All right, so on the upgrade side, speaking of durability, the first one we want to cover is Bolstered by Hate. That's a simple +1 wound. So this is great to put on Zarshia to kick her up to 4, or put it on any of the other 3 to get them to 5 wounds, which makes them a lot more difficult to take down.
And the next one after that is Hellfire Sword. So this is a cool one. It can only go on Khagra or Razik, but 2 fighters isn't bad for a restricted card. It's range 3, 2, smash for 2 damage. And this card can really help with the fact that you're kind of, with 4 fighters, you're starved for activations. Like either, if you've lost a fighter and you don't have enough activations to be effective with your attacks, this can really give you the range where you can get a fighter to attack twice or maybe 3 times in a turn without making them have to charge. So
that's good. Yep. And then we'd be remiss if we didn't cover a +1 damage card. So Ruinous Might is +1 damage to this fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack actions. This is really helpful in getting Razek and Kragan to that mythical 3 damage attack, or even pushing Khagra to 4 damage, depending on what you need. What do we want for boards, Jason?
So the boards here really, you kind of have to be thoughtful. With only 4 fighters, it opens it up a little bit, but I would pick something where I can set up kind of middle of the board I select, and really it's where you position those feature tokens that you put down. You want to position the feature tokens that set you up for the push to get into them. So, I mean, the whole theme for this warband, in my opinion, is you play turn 1 really conservatively, trying to get the Inspire and taking the steps necessary. So like those feature hexes that you either push onto or Razik or Dour Kragan move onto to get the desecration at the end phase, they have to be safe. So mid board, a wide board would be preferable, but mid board where the feature tokens can go, where they're easily accessible and keep your guys safe.
Yeah, and that really keys into the play style. So we like to call this passive aggro. So you're probably going to spend that first turn working on positioning, getting things set up so that you can get the Inspire to gain that resilience, gain the accuracy on the attacks and the extra damage. For Zarshia, if that's not going to be an option, then you really want to focus your fire down and just try to take down targets of opportunity. So just go after fighters one at a time. Keep your warband close to each other so that they can support and counterattack and do all of those fun things. Jason, you've played them a lot. If I'm sitting down across from you and you pull them out, what do I want to do? My strategy.
It's like, so if you can take out Khagra turn 1, that kind of like unravels a lot, or just keeping them from inspiring. The one thing that most people kind of miss because you get so enamored with Khagra or Razik is there are a lot of cards in this Rivals deck that revolve around Zarshia. So, if I misplay Zarshia and get her in a position, taking her out is fairly easy because she only has 3 wounds, and it's going to eliminate a lot of what can be scored because of whether that's spell casting or just utilized, right? Like there's a couple upgrades for her, there's a gambit for her. So I'm going to take her out, but listen, if I have a shot to take out Khagra, I'm going to do it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Cool. Oh, and don't put your fighters on or adjacent to objectives. You can. Because it allows them to use that sacrifice mechanic.
Yeah, just to elaborate. If you're playing against them, don't leave objectives to give them opportunities to attack you on an objective. So, very good point. And we wrote that down and forgot that.
Okay. Been a long week.
That's right. And then I guess new player rating.
Yeah, I think unfortunately we have to say bronze. I mean, they're gorgeous fighters, and I mean, and their deck functions to a degree, but I think with they're just really reliant on having like a good card draw, and the Gloom hexes, the delve mechanic does not help the desecration mechanic at all, and it really slows down the inspire. So yeah. So I think unfortunately we have to give them that bronze.
It is very unfortunate. I really enjoy this warband, but if you do not, in my opinion, if you don't get good card draw turn 1, you're reacting the entire game. Like this warband wants to put pressure on the opponent, and unfortunately, if you don't have the right cards to set you up turn 1, you're just reacting to everything your opponent does the entire game.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like much fun.
No, not for chaos. It's not.
No. Cool. Well, so that covers Khagra's Ravagers. So why don't we jump into the Starblood Stalkers? And now I feel bad because I don't have like a.
You don't have like a.
I don't have like a sizzle reel intro coming out.
You know what?
Here are these. The I don't know, these lounge lizards coming down from the slan with a plan.
Listen, Jared. Your intro for the Ravagers, the stars aligned only once.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if they can align again talking about the Stalkers.
Starblood Stalkers. Nice. So Starblood Stalkers, these are Seraphon for anyone from Age of Sigmar, Lizard Men for anybody that's familiar with the old Warhammer Fantasy. This is a 6-fighter warband. There are 5 Skinks and 1 Saurus. Old Blood, I believe, is what he is. And so there's a lot of differences in the fighter cards, so I'm going to try to run through these as quickly as I can. Kishitaka is the diviner. He's the leader. He has a range 2, 2 smash, 2 damage attack, and a range 3, 2 smash, 1 damage attack. So not a caster, a priest, I believe. He is 4 move, 2 dodge, and 3 health, and he has an on-fighter card action that says pick 1 feature token within 3 hexes, then pick 1. Either flip that feature token or deal 1 damage to 1 enemy fighter within 1 hex of that token. This fighter can only make this action once per round. So it's a nice little way to either flip a token or deal like a little plink damage onto the fighter. The next fighter that we want to cover is Clacktrock. He is the Saurus Old Blood. He has a Celestite War Mace. I don't know. He's got a melee attack. It's range 1, 2 smash, 3 damage. And he also has a powerful Jaws attack that is range 1, 1 fury for 1 damage. But he this one is a lot like the Wolf Bite from the wow, my mind is just not there.
From Ripper
Snarlfangs. Gosh knows. So this is a free attack that this fighter can make after this fighter's activation. So after this fighter's activation, this fighter makes the powerful Jaws attack action.
I think the key difference with that one is it's after his activation. It doesn't necessarily have to be an attack activation.
Oh yeah, which is worth noting. So he could move, he could be next to somebody, go on guard, and make that attack action. And I'm actually going to cover his inspire conditions separately. So this fighter makes a successful attack action. So all he has to do is succeed on an attack, and he will inspire. His stat block is he has move 3. 1 shield for 4 health, so looks a lot like a Stormcast Eternal. And then we have the Skinks. So they're all 2 health. There are 4 of them. One of them stands out. He's a chameleon skink with his dart pipe that is range 3. 3 crits for the attack characteristic for 1 damage with cleave and ensnare. So you need to roll a crit for this attack to succeed. But if it does, then it's awesome. And it does 1 damage. You cannot drive back, but if the attack succeeds, then you give the target 1 move token. So you can really shut down your opponent's plans with this. He is move for 2 dodge for 2 health. And then we have the next 3 skinks. They all have a melee attack. Hwachi is really the key when they're uninspired. He's 2 smash for 2 damage. The rest of them are pretty inaccurate. 2 fury for 1 damage on both. And then one of them has a ranged attack that's range 3, 2 fury for 1 damage. Now, when they inspire, they get a little bit better. But for the most part, you kind of what you see is what you get. The way that they inspire is after an activation, this warband holds 3 or more objectives. And so when they inspire, Kishitaka's ranged attack gets a little bit more accurate. Utapodal goes to 3 dodge and 5 move, which is pretty nice. And his dart pipes go to 2 damage. And then across the board, Hwachi stays on 1 block. Tak goes to 2 dodge. Shepik stays on 1 block. But more importantly, Shepik goes to 3 fury for 2 damage on his melee attack. And the skinks all go to 5 move. Clacktrock, when he inspires, he gets 2 block, which is really nice. He gets 4 move, which is also really nice. And his Powerful Jaws gets a little bit more accurate at 2 fury. So I know that was a lot. There's a lot to go through. But wait, there's more. So the 3 skinks, Hwachi, Tak, and Shepik, all have a skittish rule on their card. And this says reaction after an opponent's power step, push this fighter 1 hex away from an enemy fighter within 2 hexes. So you can kind of run in, do an attack, and then, or you get attacked, and now you can kind of scoot away so that you're not either within range for the next fighter to come in or within range for a subsequent attack or whatever the case is. So it just gives you a little bit of flexibility in the positioning on the warband. Jason, did I miss anything?
No, you didn't, but I think it's good to note at this part in the episode and just the review of the Direchasm warbands, as you can see that there are a lot more flavor and complexity to the warbands with all the different, kind of activation, or I'm sorry, the different inspires, different reactions, fighters not keeping kind of the same thing throughout the warband, but it really adds to the flavor of the warbands. And specifically with the Starblood Stalkers, there's a lot to digest just on the fighter cards themselves. I mean, you didn't even cover that the leader has an action where he can deal 1 damage, or
I did.
Oh, you did? See, look, I missed
that.
But
it took me so long to get through all of it.
Yeah,
I'd forgotten. Yeah.
No, there you go.
Totally covered.
There's just a lot to be had here, but it really sets them up for a really unique style of play. And some cool interactions throughout the game.
Yeah. Yep. And we'll see that theme continue as we continue to cover the rest of the Direchasm warbands. So objectives. What are the objectives that we want to?
One of the easiest objectives in Harrow Deep, like score this immediately, or Astro Matrix alignment. Score this immediately after you flip a feature token in enemy territory.
Nice. And you could do that with Kishitaka. Move him, then do his on-fighter card action, and boom, flip. You're done.
Yeah. Or you could just run to a hex.
Just go throw Tak onto a hex and cover it, and then he'll die, and it's fine, because you have 5 more fighters.
Well, the cool thing here is it only has to be a feature token, right? It doesn't have to be an objective token. So you could run to one of those player-placed feature tokens, flip it into another Gloom hex.
Yep.
You're still in Gloom, but you score this card.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like it. So the next one we want to cover is Instinctive Tactics Surge. Score this immediately after resolving your warband's second or subsequent reaction in the same phase. So that includes the Clacktrock's Powerful Jaws, and it includes the Skittish reaction on the Skinks cards. So, I mean, if you have Clacktrock go in and attack, and then you have a Skink go in and attack, and then Skittish away, then boom, that's 2 reactions. So you're not even relying on Gambits, which there are Gambits that are reactions, and then there are even upgrades in this deck that provide reactions. So it's a pretty easy one to score, pretty reliable.
And then the last one is balance the cosmic equation. This is a hybrid. You can score this in the end phase if there are 2 or more enemy fighters out of action, or your warband holds more objectives than any other warband. And given what we'll go over in their gambits, holding more objectives may be easy for them.
Yeah, it can. It comes along pretty easily. So, as always, we love to feature push cards. So we have Burst from the Shadows, and this is a gambit. Choose up to 2 friendly hunters. Push each chosen fighter up to 2 hexes. See, there we go. Things that we did not cover. All of the skinks, except for the leader, are hunters. So Autopodal, the Chameleon Skink, and then Huachitak and Shepik are all hunters. So you can push any of those fighters up to 2 hexes. So push 2 of them onto feature tokens, and now you're set up to be on objectives when you develop them.
It's pretty strong, especially with it being 2 hexes.
I like it.
Staying with that theme, you have Haunchy's Device, which is pick 1, push 1 enemy fighter 1 hex, or pick an opponent. That player picks 3 fighters from their warband and pushes each of them 1 hex. If they have fewer than 3 surviving fighters, they push each of their surviving fighters 1 hex. So this is like a distraction, which we referred to earlier, but like just it is so powerful because you're pushing an enemy fighter, and then if they have 3 fighters, you're like, just push all 3 of them and mess up your entire plan.
Yep. Works out well. It's a good way to get either Dower, Kragan, or Razik off of objectives to prevent that desecration token from going out. And so the last thing that we want to cover, so they have a series of gambits called asterisms. And the one that we want to cover is the Great Drake. This is +1 dice to friendly fighters range 1 attack actions. And these asterisms are special ploys because the effects persist until the end of the round or until any player plays another asterism card. So if you're playing against another Starblood Stalkers warband, their asterism card could override your asterism. But +1 dice to friendly fighters range 1 attack actions is pretty nice because then now Clacktrock's 3 damage attack is 3 smash instead of 2.
I like it. And it lasts all your activations.
Activations.
So moving on to the upgrades, probably their most powerful one, and we've seen this before in the warbands, but Unfeeling Resilience. When this fighter is dealt damage, reduce that damage by 1. If you can get this out early and get it on Clacktrock, he becomes really beastie. Yes.
Very nice, yeah. And so the next one we want to cover is Heaven Blessed Weapon. So this is +1 dice and knockback 1 to this fighter's range 1 attack actions. So the card art features Clacktrock, obviously making his 3 damage attack more accurate, is pretty nice. But it also could mean that Huachi's 2 damage attack gets more accurate, or Shepik's 2 damage attack when he inspires gets more accurate. It's just in general, accuracy is nice. Extra dice is nice.
And the final one would be Selfless Sacrifice. This is restricted to just the skinks. So 5 of your fighters, anyone but Clacktrock. And its reaction during an attack action that targets this fighter after the deal damage step. If this fighter will be taken out of action, this fighter makes an attack action. And really good card to get an additional attack off, because one thing that this warband will struggle with outside of Clacktrock is dealing damage. Yep. So any additional attack that you can get is very beneficial.
Yep. No, I agree.
So boards.
Yeah, so 6 fighters, it's a struggle, right? Like there are no good boards, but there are also no bad boards, really, when it comes to placing 6 fighters. One thing that is of note is you're probably safe if you're doing the roll-off to opt to take 2 objectives, and therefore you get to control how the boards are positioned, because that's going to help you position your fighters better to keep them alive. So it's okay to have 2 objectives to play, or 2 feature tokens to place down. You don't have to be stressed that you're not getting to place 3, because chances are that 3rd one is going to be close if you're really fishing for the Inspire. But you do want to choose a board where Clacktrock and Autopodal are the only 2 ones that are really out in front. mostly because Clacktrock has 4 wounds and Autopodal is on 2 dodge, and so they're probably they're your most resilient fighters going into that first round.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think just one other thing on the Autopodal that you covered his attack action, but if you put him out there and you kind of like dangle bro him or risk him a little bit, he does have the 2 dodge, but if you can land a free attack with him, like 3 dice on a crit, and get a move token onto your enemy early game, that is like really powerful to shut them down.
Yeah.
But the odds are ever within your favor to roll the crits.
That's right.
So, playstyle.
Yeah. So I think they're flex. And they're probably a little bit more aggro based on their rivals deck than you really want to play them. But if you're going to score all of the objectives in your deck, or most of the objectives in your deck, you're going to have to be taking out enemy fighters. But when we say flex, we mean hold objective and aggro. So they have cards that require them to be on objectives to score, and cards that they're required to take enemy fighters out in order to score them. The one thing that is of note is that Inspire Them really isn't that critical. You want to get Clacktrock inspired so he can go to 2 block, and his Powerful Jaws attack can become a little bit more accurate and get the move. But you're probably going to be doing that with him anyway. He's going to be attacking. Like, Clacktrock is not the fighter that you want sitting in the back. But beyond that, Autopodal going to 3 dodge is really nice, but the 5 move is generally not critical. The only thing that's really of note is Shepik getting a fairly accurate 2 damage attack on the Inspire. But beyond that, it's not really mission critical. So if you don't feel like you can get the Inspire turn 1, but you can score some other objectives, go for it. And then try to get the Inspire later.
Just bite him with the dinosaur.
Bite him with the dinosaur.
Awesome. So, I'm sitting down at the table and you put them on the board. What do? I run away from the dinosaur?
Run away from the dinosaur. There are 4 2-wound fighters in this warband. And most other warbands will have at least 1, if not 2 damage attacks. So you got a pretty good chance of taking down 2, maybe even 3 fighters in that first round, which is 3 glory, which lets you get upgrades on. It gets you ahead in the game. So if you can target the squishy ones, then go for that. The other option is you just throw everything that you have into Clacktrock, because if you can take him down, then this warband is really going to struggle to do damage consistently. So yeah, that's my advice.
I agree. I think that's great advice. Farm the glory.
Farm the glory. All right, what's their rating, Jason?
I think they're a solid silver.
They're pretty good. They're a lot of fun to play. Clacktrock is a beast.
Yeah. I think that they're the war band, especially in Rivals, where it takes a game or 2 to kind of get all the mechanics that we were talking about. But having played the Rivals deck, I think the Rivals deck functions very well, and they're a lot of fun. When you can get Clacktrock to kind of be the distraction, and then get all your skinks to kind of do the dirty work. It's fun. So.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, so that covers Khagra's Ravagers and the Starblood Stalkers. When we come back, we will cover the Crimson Court and Hedkrakka's Madmob.
And we're back, and we're really ready to sink our teeth in to the Crimson Court.
Nice.
So next up is the Crimson Court in their Rivals deck. The Crimson Court is a 4-fighter warband, and before we start to even talk about the fighters, I think we really need to get out that they have 2 kind of Inspire mechanics. There's a traditional Inspire, where you flip the card and the fighters gain stats, and you do that by removing all the hunger counters. And there's a Bloodthirst, which is if you have 3 hunger counters. You get hunger counters just at the start of the round. So at the start of the round, at the start of the first round, you'll get 1. At the start of the second round, you get another 1, and so on in the third round, where they'll have 3. both of them have their ups and downs. Like gain abilities for being bloodthirsted or inspired. But really, this adds a kind of management piece to the warband where you have to decide whether what is good for you at that moment for that fighter. So then, other than that, the 4 fighters, they all have 4 move. They all have 1 defense. 3 of them are on block. But Anais is on 1 dodge. He's the guy with the wings. And they're all 4 health to start. They're also flat 2 damage across the board on their base cards. Where Duval, the leader, has 3 smash. Gorath, the enforcer, has 2 smash. Velis, thank you. Velis has 2 smash. And Anais has 3 fury. So all very basic stat blocks for the 4 fighters. Duval, if you decide to inspire him, he will gain an additional block, so he'll go to 2 block, and he'll gain cleave on his attack. For Gorath,
hold on, he also gains a spell.
Oh, okay, spell. I didn't even know he had a spell. Cool.
All right.
So he gains a spell. Use this after this fighter's attack action. Takes the target out of action. If cast, choose 1 enemy fighter within 4 hexes of this fighter. Push the chosen fighter up to 2 hexes. Well,
closer to this fighter.
Closer. I didn't even know you had that. So
I know, right?
That's good stuff. That's actually a pretty cool spell, but I've never used it.
Yeah.
Then Gorath, if he inspires, so again, you inspire them by removing the hunger counters after they take someone out of action. So he would inspire. He gains a damage. So he goes to 3 damage and gains knockback. He also gets a spell. So this is just a spell action. It's not a reaction. If cast, choose 1 friendly fighter within 4 hexes. Within 4 hexes and 1 enemy fighter within 4 hexes. Remove 1 hunger or wound counter from one of the chosen fighters and give it to the other. So you basically swap wound and hunger counters back and forth. I guess there's some play there. Once again, I didn't
if you're damaged, you could throw one of your damage onto your enemy. That's really the play in the Rivals format. So you can take one of your wound counters and put it on an enemy fighter.
Cool. I don't know if it's
worth an action, but it's worth there. An action.
It's there. And then she goes to oh my lord, I'm losing my train of thought tonight. So when she inspires, she's on guard, which is kind of cool. And then she gains Cleaving and Stare on her attack. And then Anais gets an additional dodge, and his attacks go to 3 smash instead of 3 fury. The additional thing is if they go bloodthirsted, Duval gains a damage. So this is when he gains 3 or more hunger counters. He gets +1 damage. So he goes 3 smash for 3 damage, which is pretty good. But he is -1 dice, so he'll go back to 2 smash when he's bloodthirsted. Gorath gets -1 move when he's bloodthirsted, but he gets +1 wound, so he goes to 5 wounds. Velis gets scything, which can be very beneficial in some matchups to get free scything. And then Anais gets +2 move, so he goes to 6 move. Again, it's just a ebb and flow of where you want them to go. I think, we'll touch upon it upon the cards, but really if I had to, give advice on how to play the warband is inspire 1 and keep the rest with bloodthirsted. I prefer to try to inspire Duval to get the extra resilience on the two shields.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're starved for doing damage, getting bloodthirsted and going to 3 damage is not so bad either. And then you could inspire Gorath, and then you have 2 3 damage fighters. So the choice is yours. The ones that I would not inspire, and I would just let go bloodthirsted, are the other two, because Anais going to 6 move. You can really keep them safe in the back and bring them up when you need to kind of have a supporting fighter. So that's the fighters' objectives, Jared. What do we do?
All right, so the first one we're going to cover is Crimson Hounds. And so I just really like this one because it's pretty easy to set up. Score this immediately after an activation in which your friendly fighter makes an attack action that targeted an enemy fighter adjacent to one or more friendly fighters. So, if your opponent charges into you, they've got a fighter that now cannot move. So you throw one fighter charge, do your attack. Next activation, throw another fighter charge, make your attack, and then possibly take them out. But at the same time, you can score this objective. So I like it.
Yeah, it's super reliable. And the fact that you're doing 2 damage, that's good, right? Like you're probably going to have to do 2 attacks. Second one is Spirited Attempt. Surge, score this immediately after an enemy fighter's attack action that deals damage to a friendly fighter if the friendly fighter is not out of action. This is like, oh, you should have killed me, glory.
Yep.
Right? So the fact you're 4 wound fighters, someone's going to come in and attack you, most likely not doing 4 right off the bat, is an easy early score.
Yep. No, I agree. And so then the last one that we want to cover, and this is particularly useful in the Warhammer Underworld's Hero Deep setting with the Delve mechanic. Score this in an end phase if your warband holds all objectives in 1 or more players' territories. And it's for 2 glory in the end phase. So you just have to flip 1 feature token to an objective and sit a fighter on it, and boom, 2 glory in the end phase.
As long as I don't counter you.
As long as you don't counter me. But if you're countering me, that means you're probably coming into my territory, which is just fine.
Where do you want me?
Yep.
And then because of the hunger mechanic, we did want to cover one more just as an honorable mention.
A hungerable mention.
Hungerable. Blood Curse, it's a hybrid. Score this in the 3rd end phase if surviving friendly fighters have 10 or more hunger counters, or there is only 1 surviving enemy fighter. So this is a 3rd end phase card, so it can gum you up early in the game. But you could be working through it the entire game and building those hunger counters. You are going to have to rely on some sort of cards, whether that's a gambit or an upgrade, to get an additional hunger onto one of your fighters, as well as keeping your fighters alive. So it is not the easiest to score, but it's nice that it has 2 conditions. And we thought we would just call it out, because there is a reason to keep that hunger stacking onto the guys. So.
Correct. Yep. That makes sense. So for gambits, the first one that we want to cover is Mighty Strike. So +1 damage to the first attack action made by a friendly fighter in the next activation. I mean, it's nice. You're pushing any of your fighters from 2 damage to 3, or Gorath Inspired, or Duval Bloodthirsty to 4, which can be nice. I don't love that it's a gambit because the attack could miss, but it's still pretty critical for taking down, 3 or 4 wound fighters, potentially early on in the game.
Yeah, so. And then the other card, well, one of the cards in here, I think it's probably one of the best gambits out there in the Rivals format, is Quicksilver Advance. It's choose 1 friendly fighter, then pick 1. The chosen fighter makes 1 move action, or remove 1 of that fighter's charge tokens and give that fighter 1 move token. And that's really the key there, where you can remove the charge token and give them a move token, which allows you to then again attack if there's somebody adjacent to you or within range of Gorath's 2 range. This can really set up some cool things where your opponent thinks that they're safe because your fighters have charged, so they're either charging you back, or just forget that you have this card, and you can get some free attacks, or a lot of free attacks if it happens early enough in the round. Or if you're out of position, you can double move or move out of activation sequence. So Really powerful card.
I like it. I like it a lot. So the last gambit that we want to cover is Tenebrous Form. Choose 1 friendly fighter. That fighter's defense characteristic is 3 dodge. This fighter cannot make actions or reactions, cannot cast spells, cannot be on guard, cannot hold objectives, and cannot be driven back. This effect persists until the end of the phase or until that fighter is taken out of action. So it allows you to kind of throw a fighter in, throw this on them, make them a less attractive target. And, with 3 dodge, you're really fishing for that crit chance on defense to block whatever's coming in at you. But it's kind of nice that it gives you like a little extra resiliency.
Yeah,
You've thrown yourself out of position.
Especially if you're standing on the Gloom Hex.
On the Gloom Hex, yep. Because now you're basically on 3 block. So what's our hungerable mention for the Gambits, Jason?
Driven to Hunt. So driven to Hunt is the hungerable mention. So it's pick one, give 1 hunger counter to each friendly fighter within 2 hexes of your leader, or push one other friendly fighter within 2 hexes of your leader up to 1 hex. So yeah, it is a push card, but really why we're calling it out here is that hunger mechanic, early positioning in the game. You can almost get them bloodthirsted right away, right? So you kind of have them all set up on that board with the Vol in the center, everybody within 2. You play this card. Now they're all on 2 hunger counters, and then going into turn 2, some of them are going to have 3, and they're going to have that bloodthirst addition to their stat line. So,
yep, no, looks good. All right, so on to the upgrades. First upgrade that we want to cover is Vampiric Might. So this is +1 damage to this fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack actions if this fighter is inspired. +2 damage to range 1 and range 2 attack actions on a critical hit if this fighter has Bloodthirst. So it's an old school. Anybody that's been playing since Warhammer Underworld Shadespire will be familiar with Concealed Weapon. This is Concealed Weapon on range 1 and 2 attack actions if you're bloodthirsty, or just your straight great strength if you're inspired. So really critical for getting that extra damage into this warband, where typically you're on 2 damage for most of the fighters. What's next, Jason?
Next I want to call out Deathly Majesty. It is restricted to just Deval, but it is a great card, especially in Rivals. -1 dice from adjacent fighters' attack actions that target this fighter to a minimum of 1. So really can keep your leader around for a turn or 2.
Yep. No, it's good. And another thing that can keep your leader around for a turn or 2 is the Von Marusi armor. So this is the last upgrade that we really want to feature. If this fighter is inspired, reduce all damage dealt to this fighter by 1 to a minimum of 1. If this fighter has Bloodthirst, if this fighter would be dealt precisely 1 damage, this fighter is not dealt that damage. So you can just straight ignore anything that would do 1 damage. So a lethal hex, a 1 damage attack, a spell that does 1 damage. Keishitaka's on fighter card ability.
Yeah, if I'm bloodthirsted, pretty good. And then if I'm inspired, we love the reduced damage. So
yep.
And then the hungerable mention for the upgrades is Glutton for Gore. So when this fighter is given 1 or more hunger counters, instead give this fighter that many +1. So if you have this on at the end of the round and you're going into the next round, when you were to gain 1 hunger counter, you would then gain 2.
Yep.
And then the same can apply when removing. You can remove them double as well, but in this case, in Rivals, when you're removing them, it's probably because you killed somebody and they're all coming off anyway. But it is another way to get hunger onto a fighter to work towards that blood cursed. But that is all the cards that we wanted to call out for the wonderful Crimson Court. But what kind of board are you going to take?
Yeah, so, I mean, kind of the theme with our 4-fighter warbands is you want starting hexes kind of along the midline of your board. The thing of note here is that you want to be able to control the objectives that are in your territory with a focus on scoring Death's Domain. But because of their play style, a board with some in the middle and maybe 1 or 2 up front that can just dive into enemy territory. Because what is their play style, Jason?
They are aggro, just straight. Other than that one objective, they're straight up aggro, and they're just kind of, because they all have baseline 2 damage. You're probably just gonna have to work at it. It's probably gonna be 2 attacks going through on a 4-wound fighter. So it's just the long term aggro. They kind of death by 1,000 cuts. I like to think them by.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But if I'm sitting down across from you how do I beat you if you're playing this warband?
Yeah, I mean, so they're going to have to attack. Most of their objectives are around attacking, being attacked, taking enemy fighters out. So you can kind of pick your engagements, set your resilient targets up front, and then just go in. If you've got ranged attacks, you can try to whittle them down without letting them throw another fighter into counterattack, early on in the action phase. If you can see that they're building up hunger on one particular fighter and you really want to try to stop Blood Curse, you can try to focus that fighter down. I would say if you can get Duval down before he inspires and goes to two shields, that's kind of a big deal. If you can get Gorath down before he gets bloodthirsty so he doesn't get that additional wound, that's also kind of a big deal. But, just focus one fighter at a time because they get a lot less efficient as they start to lose fighters.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. All right, what do we rate him, Jason?
This one's kind of difficult for me because the more and more I look at them, like they're really solid. Like their rivals deck is really solid. The fighter stat lines are really solid. So I'm going to give them a silver, but with a kind of a caveat. Like I think once you become more familiar, they may be able to push to gold. The only reason I'm giving them a silver is because for that new player, there is a lot to manage with the hunger counters, with the inspire. And then, I mean, their upgrades, like they have 5 fighter specific upgrades. Some of their objectives, if you lose a certain fighter, it might be harder to score it. I think it was on the chase. Yeah, on the chase is for like a move characteristic of 6 or more. So if you lose an IS early, it might be hard to score that. There's a lot to manage, but I think if you play them a couple times and really unlock and have a plan for, I want to bloodthirst this person, and I want to inspire this fighter, and this is my plan of attack, you have the potential to compete with even those gold level warbands.
Yep, I'd agree. So next up, we've got Hedkrakka's Madmob. They might be... this is tough. I don't know. They might be my favorite warband from Direchasm.
They might be?
They might be. I think they are. I don't know. Kainan's Reapers, we haven't covered them yet. They come close, but that might be Age of Sigmar. Tainting my opinion there. Anyway, so Hedkrakka's Madmob. This is another 4-fighter warband. Each fighter is pretty unique, and we'll get into that in a second. But like the Crimson Court, they introduce another mechanic to the game, and that mechanic is called Primacy. So this mechanic was actually introduced in the Direchasm starter set, and it's just a rule set for the game. There are cards that include the word Primacy, whether those are gambits, ploys, objectives, upgrades, whatever the case is. And if you include any of those cards, then you are playing Primacy within your game. Because Hedkrakka's Madmob has the word Primacy on their card, then you are playing Primacy whenever you're playing Hedkrakka's Madmob. Anyway, Primacy is a player gains the Primacy token after an activation in which either a friendly fighter's attack action targeted a fighter with no wound counters and took that fighter out of action, in which a friendly fighter's attack action took an enemy leader out of action, or if their fighter holds 4 or more objectives. So you can pass the Primacy token back and forth. It starts in neutral territory. Nobody owns it, so you can gain it. You can take it from your opponent, but if a player has the Primacy token at the end of the round, they gain 1 spent glory and then discard the Primacy token. So it's an additional glory. In the championship format, it's very useful for really aggressive warbands, and it helps them to score more glory in the end phase, whereas hold objective or other passive playstyles might be able to score more glory in passive ways. It just kind of gives a boost to aggressive warbands. So back to the Madmob. So we'll just run through them. So first we have Hedkrakka, the God of Gork. He's got a range 2 Fury, 2 damage attack, and then he has his Bone Crusher, which is a spell. It's range 3, cast on focuses, but it has the Crushing special rule, which is +1 damage if the target is adjacent. So you could do 2 damage with your thing. But he also has the ability Primal Portent. When you gain the Primacy token, choose one friendly fighter that fighter is inspired. And then he has another rule called Primal Surge, and this says after an activation in which this fighter's attack action takes an enemy fighter out of action, gain the primacy token. So unlike the original primacy rule, in which you have to either take out a leader or a fighter with no wounds characteristics, Hedkrakka, and additionally we'll get into this, Wallop to Skull and Toothdaga, as long as you just take out an adjacent fighter, you gain the primacy token. So it's a lot easier for them to gain the primacy token than it is for their opponent to gain the primacy token. So his Inspire, he's 3 move, 2 dodge, 4 health. When he inspires, he goes to 4 move, and then his melee attack is 3 fury instead of 2, and his Bone Crusher spell goes to 3 damage when targeting adjacent fighters. So the next fighter is Wallop the Skull. He has a 2 smash, 2 damage attack with Leveler, which is +1 damage if the fighter has a wounds characteristic of 4+. He also has the Primal Surge rule, 3 move, 1 dodge, 4 health. When he inspires, he gains Cleave on his attack, and he gets the Lucky Warpaint roll, which says you can reroll 1 dice in this fighter's defense rolls. Next, we have Toothdaga, or Wolverine, as we like to call him. He's got 4 like bone claws that he uses as his weapon. So he's got a range 1, 3 fury, 2 damage attack, and he's 3 move, 1 dodge, 4 health. But he also has another ability on his card, and it is Primal Trackers. At the start of the first round, choose up to 2 other friendly hunters, and that is Wallop and Daco, the fighter that I haven't covered yet, and push each chosen fighter 1 hex towards an enemy leader. So you can put them on the front line and then push them into neutral territory, or start them further back and then push them up closer to help you control your engagements. He also has the Primal Surge ability, so if he takes an enemy fighter out of action while he's adjacent, he gets the primacy whether they were wounded before or not. Critically, I didn't even do that on purpose. When he inspires, his attack goes to 4 fury, and he gains the Savage rule, which is on a critical hit, this attack action does +1 damage. So with 4 dice, he's got a pretty good shot of doing 3 damage. He also goes to 4 move, but he gains 2 dodge, which is pretty good. And the last fighter that we have is Daco Sharpsticka. He has a range 3, 2 fury, 1 damage attack with the lots of R's special rule. So anybody that's played Savage Oryx or Savage Orcs in Fantasy or Age of Sigmar is going to be familiar with this idea. He has a reaction after this fighter's activation. If this fighter has no move or charge tokens, make this attack action, then give this fighter 1 charge token. So if he's standing still and he shoots, he can shoot again. He actually has the Primal Tracker rule. After this fighter's move action, if this fighter holds an objective in enemy territory and there are no enemy fighters within 2 hexes, gain the primacy token. Prior to Harrow Deep, this was actually pretty reliable, but now that feature tokens start as gloom hexes and not objective tokens, it's a little bit more difficult. When he inspires, he also gains 4 move. His bow attack goes to 3 fury, and he also gets the Lucky Warpaint rule. So he can reroll 1 defense die. I think I got it all.
You did. You nailed it. There's a lot in there to unpack with this warband, but you covered everything.
Sweet. So objectives.
Yeah, objectives. The first one I'm going to say is Bring It On.
Bring it on.
Bring it on.
Love it.
So it's Surge Duel. Score this immediately after activation if an enemy fighter made an attack action in that activation that targeted a friendly fighter as part of a charge action, and that friendly fighter is not out of action. So again, we're in Rivals, so 4 wound fighters, pretty resilient. Someone charges in, tries to take you out. They don't do it, and you score glory.
Yep, you didn't kill me, now I get a glory. Congratulations. So the next one we want to cover, again, we're just thinking about things that are reliable, controllable. This is Here We Go. Score this immediately after an activation if each surviving friendly fighter is in enemy territory or each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more charge tokens. With some pushes and some cleverness, you might be able to do this in like 2 activations, or you can get a nice surge going into the end phase after your 4th activation because you've pushed all of your fighters into enemy territory or charged them all. Yep.
Yeah, and then the third one will be the Eye of Gorka Morka. So dual score this in the end phase if you have the primacy token and your leader holds an objective.
Yep.
So pretty easy to do.
Yep. Reliable, pretty easy to control. So for gambits, I know that everyone listening is going to be shocked. We're going to choose the Great Stomp, which is push each friendly fighter up to 1 hex towards the nearest enemy fighter. So between Tufdaka's Tireless Trackers rule and the Great Stomp, you could actually have 2 fighters in enemy territory at the start of the game or very early in the game. So everybody likes to push.
Push them all. And then I'm just going to jump ahead to my favorite. So
do it.
So Warpaint Ward.
Gosh, you hate this card.
I just love it so much. So its reaction during an attack action that targets a friendly fighter before the deal damage step, roll 1 magic dice. On a roll of a crit, the combat sequence ends. So like just doesn't happen. It's over. It's done with. No damage.
No drive back. No
Nothing.
Trap.
Done.
Nothing.
I'm done. And the or on a roll of a focus, instead reduce the damage by 1. So pretty good odds that it's going to go off. Yes, sometimes you roll a channel and then you're like, oh darn. But if you roll that crit, it's beautiful.
It is beautiful. And I think we've each done it to each other at least once. So it's nice. So speaking of rolling crits and ending an attack sequence, the next gambit that we want to feature is Unhinged Ferocity. I know. I think I get a little unhinged when that magical crit shows up. This is a reaction. Use this after a friendly fighter's activation in which that fighter made 1 or more failed attack actions. If you have the primacy token, discard the primacy token. Then that fighter makes 1 attack action. Otherwise, inspire that fighter. So it's kind of a win-win. So either you're going to get to attack again if you have primacy in hand, or you get to inspire that fighter. This is great for Tufdaga because you can throw him in if his attack misses and you don't have primacy yet. You can inspire him and get him on 2 dodge, which kind of helps his resilience.
Yeah, the other key thing there too is, in Rivals, you're going to have a hard time getting rid of the primacy because of the way that the primacy rules work. Your opponent really only are going to have either take you out, just straight attack with 4 wound fighters. There's not many warbands that can deal 4 damage just straight up without plinking you down. So that's going to be very rare that you're going to lose primacy that way. The only other way would be to lose your leader, and that's only going to happen once a game. So, to kind of get these guys inspired, you got to pass that token back and forth.
And that actually brings something up that I didn't mention in the beginning is once you have the primacy token, you cannot gain it again. You have to get rid of it before you can gain it again. And that's the only way to inspire. So there are a lot of ploys and upgrades in here that allow you to discard the primacy token, which is going to be critical for inspiring fighters. All right. So what about upgrades?
So on to upgrades, just going to start with that Berserk Might. Just give me all the might. So this fighter's range 1 and range 2 attack actions have knockback 1. Great. That's it, right? No. +1 damage if you to fighters range 1, range 2 attack actions while you have the primacy token.
Yeah. And that's the key there is, the knockback is fine, but really you're fishing for that +1 damage. It's going to push, Tufdaga can get to 4 damage if he rolls a crit. Wallop to Skull can go to 4 damage if he's attacking somebody that has 4 or more wounds. So it works out really well. The next thing that we want to cover is Lucky Bone, and this one is really nice. So reaction after this fighter's attack roll, defense roll, or casting roll, discard this card. If you do, you can reroll any number of dice in that roll. This is awesome for Tufdaga when he's inspired because you're rolling 4 dice. So you're really fishing for that crit to get him to 3 damage. So you can roll for your 4 dice. As long as you have 1 fury, just discard this guy, pick up the other 3 dice, fish for those crits, get that extra damage.
Love those crits. Love the 4 fury.
Or reroll 2 defense dice.
Or reroll your defense dice. Because remember, if you're going to die, you might as well do it.
Yep.
The last one they want to cover is Power of the Beast. This is a +1 wound upgrade, but if you have the primacy token, you get +2 wounds.
Yeah.
The only trick here is remember at the end of the round, you're going to discard that primacy token. So if you only have 1 rune remaining and this card is active when that primacy token goes away,
that fighter will go out of action.
So. Yeah, they will. Yep.
So that's all the cards. What board are you gonna place out there?
Any board that can get your 4 fighters as close to enemy territory as possible.
Whatever do you mean? They want to go chopping?
They do. Want to go stomping and chopping and smashing and.
So let me guess what their play style is.
Just pure passive hold objective.
No, that's not the orc way.
No, it is not. It is pure aggro. I think the only thing that requires them to hold an objective is Eye of Goromorka. I think everything else deals with enemy fighters out of action, enemies or you being in enemy territory, you inspiring, which only happens if you gain primacy. Yeah. Yep. So I played them a lot, Jason. What's your strategy when you're playing against me?
Yeah, so really there's 2 things. If I can get Hedkrakka in a vulnerable position, I'm probably going to go after him because he really is the inspire condition. So if you don't have your leader, your fighters are not inspiring off the primacy. They might inspire off of cards, but they're not going to inspire off of primacy. And then after him, if you're doing what you should be doing and kind of hiding him, I'm going to probably try to take down Toothdaga as early as possible, because once he inspires, 2 dodge is pretty good, and then more importantly, his 4 fury attack can just be devastating. Plus, I know how long you spent painting that model and how great he looks, so just got to get him off the board.
That's right. That's only fair. Yeah.
So that's the play style. What would you rate?
So. I think we have to give a little shout out to the Discord, to the I think it's the Vassal Discord. Compact from the Vassal Discord gave us this rating early on, but Jason and I talked about it, and we think we agree. I think even for a new player, I think that they get that gold rating, that shiny gold. The Warband is straightforward. Their objectives, their gambits, their upgrades all lean towards doing what the fighter cards want you to do anyway. And what the fighters allow you to do with their 4 wounds. And so, I mean, and like the additional glory that you can get from having the primacy token on top of that, I think it just pushes them into that gold rating.
Yeah, maybe I'll give it to you on this one. Maybe into it.
It's hard to give the gold. I agree. I mean, we were, I think, 3 out of 10 for Beastgrave got gold.
Yeah, and I think that their power deck isn't as straightforward as some other power decks may have been that receive gold, but I do think that the primacy mechanic and the fact that they can get 3 additional glory if played right.
Yeah.
And then also too, if they go into a lower wound warband, like a 2 wound fighter warband.
Yeah.
They can really deal well. So I'll give it to you.
Okay. Sweet. All right. So when we come back, we will cover Kainan's Reapers and Elathain's Soulraid. And that will be it. And we're back with the final 2 warbands of the Direchasm season of Warhammer Underworlds. We will be talking about Kainan's Reapers and Elathain's Soulraid. We're going to talk about Kainan's Reapers first. This is a 6-fighter death warband, and it introduces a big boy. So this is similar to Hrothgorn's Man-Trappers. Yeah, so we've got... I'm going to run through the fighter cards, and then they have a couple of mechanics that we're going to have to get into, but we'll get there. So we'll start with the leader, Mir Kainan. He's a level 1 wizard, for whatever that's worth. He's got a range 2, 2-smash, 3 damage attack, and then he's got a range 1, 2-smash, 2 damage attack with scything. And he also has an invigorated rule. At the start of this fighter's activation, you can discard 2 tithe counters. Well, what are tithe counters, you say, Jared? I'll get there. If you do pick one modifier to apply until the end of the activation, either +1 move, or the Soul Reaper axe has +1 dice or +1 damage. So you can either gain some accuracy or gain some damage on your axe. He is a 3 move, 1 block, 6 wound fighter.
Wow.
So quite the beast.
Yeah.
Six wounds, starts with 3 damage, and then has an additional scything attack.
Yeah.
He's like the jack of all trades.
He's a monster, and he's a wizard.
Oh, wizard.
Yep. So the Bone Tithe mechanic, and this also goes into their Inspire. This is the same Inspire condition for the entire warband. So after a power step, you have 3 or more tithe counters. Well, what are tithe counters? So the Bone Tithe rule says after an enemy fighter is taken out of action, gain 1 tithe counter. If that fighter had a wounds characteristic of 4+, gain 2 tithe counters instead. Only one fighter can use this ability each time a fighter is taken out of action. That rule is written on there because Kainan and his second in command both have this rule. When Kainan inspires, his Soul Reaper axe goes to 4 damage. His scything attack goes to 3 smash, and he gains a block. So he's now 3 move, 2 block, 6 damage. And he maintains that the invigorated rule. So you can discard tithe counters to move faster, be more accurate, or do more damage if you need to. So the next 5 fighters are all Mortex. We'll start with the Lieutenant. He's Benar Kenta. He has a range 2 smash, 2 damage attack with the Nadirite special rule. And the Nadirite special rule is as follows. +1 damage if the attack roll contains any single supports and there is 1 friendly supporting Mortec, or if it contains any single supports and or double supports and there are 2 or more friendly supporting Mortex. So if you are clustered around a fighter and a fighter has the Nadirite rule, you kind of have a chance to do some additional damage. He is 3 move, 1 shield with 3 health, and when he inspires, he gains cleave. So that's pretty good. And so the next fighter we have, and these are all, they have a similar stat block. So the next Mortex are all 3 move, 1 block, 2 health, with a variety of attacks. Karu is 2 smash for 1 damage with Nadirite. Senha is 2 smash for 1 damage with Nadirite. Hakor is 2 smash for 2 damage, but he does not have Nadirite. And then Nohim is range 3, 2 smash for 1 damage with Nadirite. But all of the Mortex, including Benar Kenta, can key off of this Mortec Advance rule, which is found on Hako's card. The Karu, Senha, Hakor, and Nohim all have the Mortec Advance rule, and I'll talk about how that plays itself out in a second. But Mortec Advance says reaction after this fighter's move action. So this is any of the 2 wound Mortex. Choose 1 friendly Mortec that has no move or charge tokens. The chosen fighter makes a move action that must end adjacent to this fighter. Sorry. So, Hakor charges. Then you can move another Mortec as long as that Mortec ends adjacent to Hakor. So that actually means that you can move all 5 of your Mortecs in 1 activation. The key here is that Benar cannot start the chain. He can only end the chain. So he does not have the Mortec Advance rule on his fighter card. So he can only be the last Mortec chosen to do this. But this is important for keying off that Nadirite rule and for triggering some of the objectives or helping set up subsequent turns, helping get fighters out of the backfield without using an activation to do so. When they inspire, Karu and Senha both go to 2 block. They have shields. Karu's Nadirite Club gains knockback 1 and goes to 2 damage. Senha's Nadirite Blade goes to 3 fury and 2 damage. Hakor gains cleave, and Nohim's Nadirite Bow goes to 3 smash. So, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot easier to manage if you're reading, if you have all the cards in front of you. But
yeah, so I think like for our listeners, especially with this, so like just giving an example of kind of how you would work through the Mortec Advance. So you would charge with X.
Charged.
Right.
Right.
So like Hakor, like I want to attack with Hakor.
Yep.
Or no, he's probably a bad example because he doesn't have Nadirite. So I want to charge with Karu.
Sure.
Right. So I'm charging. I move that fighter next to the enemy that I want to charge. I then react with Senna and move that fighter next to the enemy fighter in Karu. And then if I wanted to, I could bring Hackor up as well.
Yep.
But really, I want to be setting those additional moves up, not just for the supports, but for the next attack actions, right? So really, like, maybe I'm dragging Benar up because he has range 2, so I'm setting him up for another attack afterwards. And with them having Nadirite, there's the ability to have the additional damage.
Yeah. I mean, it's king off a dice roll. It's kind of like a grievous attack, so an extra damage on a crit, but you get an extra damage on a single support, or if you've got 2 supporting fighters, it could be a single support or a double support. Yeah. So not only are you gaining accuracy on your attacks with those supports, but you're also getting the potential for more damage.
It's a little complex to set it up, but once you see it on the board and once they start playing, it's almost like the swarm tactic, right? Like you get 1 or 2 fighters and you just swarm your guys right around them, and hopefully you're setting up your ranged fighters to make multiple attacks after the move actions.
Yep.
So moving on to objectives. I think we're going to start out with Pride of the Thorak Cast. Score this immediately after an activation of 3 or more Morteks are in enemy territory. So with Mortek Advance, I should be able to do that pretty easy, right?
Yeah, I mean, depending on your board choice, you can do that in 1 activation, which is pretty reliable. So the second one that we want to feature is Pride of the Emissarian Cast, and this is score this immediately after an activation if your leader holds an objective in enemy territory. It's a little bit more difficult to set up in Heraldite because of the delve mechanic, but it's still doable. It's your leader. It's Mir Kainan. I mean, he's tough, so you don't mind throwing him in early, particularly before your opponent gets inspired or upgrades on to do more damage. So it's not the worst.
Yep. And then the last one we want to call it is Walking Mass Grave. Score this in an end phase of each surviving friendly fighter has 1 or more move or charge tokens, and really that could be achieved in 2 activations.
Yep.
So it's pretty easy to score.
Yep. Nope, we like it. So on to the gambits. You know us, we love pushes. So the first one is Ceaseless Advance. When you play this, you can discard any number of tithe counters, push 1 friendly Mortek for each counter you discarded, and 1 additional friendly Mortek up to 2 hexes towards the nearest enemy fighter. So you always get to push 1 Mortek, 2 hexes towards the nearest enemy fighter, and then more Morteks if you discard your tithe counters. So it's a good way to get extra positioning, extra mobility out of your fighters.
Yeah. Another push card.
Yep.
The next one would be Dire Ultimatum, and now this one is restricted just to Kainan, but it's kind of cool because it dictates what your opponent may or may not want to do. So it's -1 dice from enemy fighters' attack actions to a minimum of 1, unless the attack action targets a friendly Kainan. This effect persists until an enemy fighter makes an attack action that targets the friendly Kainan, or until friendly Kainan is out of action, or until the end of the round. So, I mean, this one, if you do have him in back, like that's just -1 attack dice to anything that they could reach.
Yep.
Or if your Morteks are kind of vulnerable, you can say, no, I don't want you to take out that easy 2-wound fighter. Come attack me, big guy.
Yep.
Come attack me.
Yep. No, it's good. I like it. And then the last gambit that we want to call out is Methodical Assault. This is a reaction. Play this after a friendly Mortek's failed attack action. Pick 1 opponent. That opponent picks 1. You gain 2 tithe counters, or that Mortek makes an attack action. So either you get to attack for free, or you get 2/3 of the way towards inspiring, just depending on where you are in the game, what game state you're in. That can actually be a tough choice for your opponent. So it's good.
Seems good.
Yep.
So, just like the next upgrade, Aura of Shaiish is a -1 dice to adjacent enemy fighters' attack actions. So again, manipulating those dice for your opponent.
Yep.
Can go on any fighter, which is cool.
And it doesn't, and those attacks don't have to target the fighter that has this upgrade either. So you can use your Mortek Advance to get a Mortek adjacent to a fighter, and now that fighter is -1 dice. So the next one that we want to talk about, this is probably the best upgrade in their deck. This is Empowered Nadirite. It's +1 damage to this fighter's range 1 and 2 Nadirite attack actions, and then +1 dice to this fighter's Nadirite attack actions. So it's limited to Karu, Kenta, Nohim, and Senha, because Hackor does not have a Nadirite weapon, and Kainan doesn't have a Nadirite weapon. But it means that Kenta's his halberd is now range 2, 3 damage with 3 dice, which is pretty stinking good. And the Nadirite rule, so potential for 4 damage. Nice.
He's hitting me. And what was the third one? I forget what would be.
Yeah, so we wanted to call it Unnerving Synchrony.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Reaction after an adjacent friendly Mortex attack action, other than a scything attack action, this fighter makes an attack action, and it's restricted to the Mortex. But this card is really unique and cool because it doesn't have to be against the same enemy fighter. It just has to be adjacent to that Mortec that's making the attack action.
Right.
So you might put this on a fighter, Mortec advance in, you get 1 attack with the original Mortec that charged, then react and attack with this fighter. Again, it could be against a different fighter or the same fighter to double up on damage to take somebody out. So really, really cool.
Yep. I like it.
So what type of board are you going to take this 6-fighter warband?
Yeah, so we're stuck with the 6 fighters. There's not going to be any great choices. You want to pick whatever's going to set up turn 1 based on the cards that are in your hand. And especially in the Rivals format, don't be afraid to pick a board that puts Kainan in the front, just because his 6 wounds are going to go a lot farther than 2 wounds. The other option is that you try to bait with the 2-wound fighter and maybe try to draw your opponent in to then do work against them with all of your Mortex. So, and you don't care about objectives other than one maybe right across the line for Kainan to step onto for Pride of the Emissary and cast.
Yeah, and you mentioned that that Kainan might be up front in kind of the Rivals format. Would you think that their playstyle differs any from Championship or?
Yeah, so I mean, I think you have to be careful aggro just because there are 4 2-wound fighters. That's just a lot of squishy targets. So I think in the Championship format, you can really tool Kainan up to do work end game. And you can use good ploys and upgrades on your Mortex early to let them do work. But I think in the Championship, you're really going to have to kind of leverage that Mortec advance and possibly let Kainan do work early. I mean, that 3 damage attack out of the gate is on a 6-wound fighter is pretty nice.
Yeah, you mean in the Rivals format?
In the Rivals format, yeah.
Yeah, I think out of all the warbands that we have reviewed, this may be the warband that kind of, I don't know, veers the most from its Championship playstyle, just where like the Mortex do a lot of the heavy lifting because of the upgrades that you can put on them, or the upgrades that you have access to in Championship. So you can really, really get a lot of work out of them. Where this, I think, to get you kind of started, Kainan's gotta do that, and then they can come in and do their thing with Swarm. So, so Rivals, I'm gonna finally get these models on the board because I haven't played my Bone Reapers yet. What are you gonna do to take me down?
Farm that glory, man. I mean, you got 6 fighters. There's gonna be 1 2-win fighter that's somewhere in threat range, and so I'm just gonna kind of push in. Maybe try to split my fighters up so you have to make choices. That you don't get to just push all of your fighters to the middle of the board. Maybe try to attack on one side and then go to the other so that you have to split your forces. But really, just do my best to farm glory where I can. I'd say that avoid Kainan, but by the time it gets to turn 2, like Kainan's probably going to be in the middle anywhere. So, you can try to skirt around him and go after the weak fighters, or you can just throw everything at him. And I mean, because he has 6 wounds, you get 2 glory when you kill him. So.
Oh, that's a good point. Yep. Yeah, you probably would do something dirty like that and split your forces and just not make me slowly, methodically walk across the battlefield collecting my bones.
Nope. Not gonna do it.
And then the last question: what are you gonna rate them for the new player?
Yeah, so I think just because of the complexity of the Mortek Advance, the fact that their objective deck is not great, and you have 4/2 Wound Fighters, we got to give them a silver. I mean, Kainan is a monster, but you really need your Mortex to do work too. It's not like with Wrathcorn where you can sit back and shoot and wait for your opponent to come to you. Everything in your objective deck is saying to go after your opponent with the Mortex, and so it just I don't think it is a gold deck for new players. I think in the hands of a savvy pilot, I think that they can do a lot of work, but that new player rating has to sit at a silver.
It's a lot of easy glory, right?
It is, yeah.
Well, good. I think that pretty much puts the Reapers to rest. So moving on to Elathain's Soulraid.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to have to write a whole...
It's going to be a novel
to explain this warband. So this is probably the most unique warband that we've seen in Underworlds so far as like the fighters, their stat lines, what they get, what they don't get. So please bear with me, because I will tell you, it's although they're unique, they're probably the most fun I've had playing a long time, because they are a true puzzle, but there's a lot. So they are a 4.5 fighter warband, and I say half because they have a spine fin, which I'll just get out of the way now. So the spine fin, or the fish, is a fighter that can start on the battlefield or start off the battlefield. You place a shoal token at the end of your opponent's power step, okay? And then at the next power step, you can then either replace spine fin to that shoal token or place another shoal token. So if he's already on the board, he kind of bounces to that shoal token, and then the next end of your opponent's power phase, you can place another shoal token, and he kind of bounces around. So he cannot move, he cannot take upgrades, he can't do anything, but he's just kind of there and floats around the battlefield, helping you gain supports and disrupting your enemy. He is the greatest little fighter ever, although he does nothing. The other keynote here is if your opponent attacks him, it does count as an attack action, but he doesn't count as being taken out of action, so he's worth no glory. It is what sets this warband apart, is wonderful spine fin. But if you are playing, then I am sure you're going to forget a shoal token once or twice while playing him.
Or every turn, like I did the first time I tried to play them.
It was the most comical game we've ever played.
It was a lot of fun. Oh, crap, the shoal token. 3 activations later.
Can I go back 3 activations because I want to place my spine fin?
No.
So, then the next one I'll talk about is Doonclaw, because he is the crab. He is the runner-up to the model of the year this past year for Games Workshop product. He is a fan favorite. So Doonclaw is a beast. He starts off with 3 move, 2 block. So it's right out the gate, 2 block, which is great. 3 wounds. He has a 2 fury attack for 2 damage. But then he has a scuttle reaction move, which after a friendly fighter's activation, you can push Doonclaw 1 hex closer to that fighter. So a really cool mechanic to help him scuttle along the battlefield. And then we get to the actual Idoneth fighters. There are 3 of them. There's Elathain, your leader. That fighter has a 4 move, 1 block, 4 wound stat line. There's 2 attack actions on the card. There is a 3 smash, 2 damage, range 1 attack, and then there's a 3 range, 2 fury, 1 damage, range attack, and they both non-inspired have Soul Harvest. So Soul Harvest, if you take an enemy fighter out of action with one of these attacks, and your other fighter, Tamiel, is out of action, you can place Tamiel on a starting hex
in your territory. So a really cool mechanic that will come into play throughout your games to bring Tamiel back into the game and gain that fighter. Because in the other two fighters, Tamiel and Furion, they only have 3 wounds, so they're a little bit weaker. So we'll jump right to Tamiel. He is a hunter as well, but he also has 2 attacks. First attack is range 2 smash for 2 damage. And then he has his harpoon, which is 3 range, 3 fury for 1 damage, but also has impact. Riptide and impact. So Riptide is you can push the fighter after the drive back step instead of driving them back. So you get to push them and manipulate them that way. And then impact is if you made this attack during a charge action, you get +1 damage. Keynote, the other attack on his also has Riptide. And then Furion is just a 3 fury, 2 damage fighter where 2 dodge on the base stats. So how do they inspire? So the way that this warband is inspired is the second round. When the second round starts, the warband inspires, which is great. They all gain quite a bit when they become inspired. Your leader, although the stats themselves on the attacks don't change, the range 1 attack gains cleave and snare and still has the soul harvest. And then the range attack gains and snare also get 5 move. Furion goes to 3 smash, 5 move, 2 block. And Tamiel gains ensnare on his range 2 attack, gains 1 move going up to 5, and has 2 dodge. There's one thing that I did forget to cover. When they are uninspired, they have the flood tie rule when they are uninspired. So this means in the first and third round, most likely, that when activated, this fighter can make a move action or a charge action if they already have a move counter. So they are very flexible in where you want to get them on the board, or if you want to position in the back of the board for defense and kind of work your way up. In the first and third round, they have access to that. At least the Ideneth do, not Doonclaw. So, Jared, that felt like I was talking in circles. Did I cover it all?
You got it all.
So again, very, very complex.
Yeah.
But when they inspire, they're very deadly, very accurate.
Yes.
And they have cool little things on all of their fighter cards. But where do we go for objectives?
Well, I just got to point out, I don't think that you have used the Riptide rule against me with Tamiel. I think you've always either driven back or not driven back. I don't think you've ever pushed me in a direction other than away.
I did not, probably because I didn't know that was on his card until I just read it. So
that's awesome.
Look out for next time we play.
I know, right? Think about all the missed opportunities here. Probably not. You have a pretty good record against me with this warband. Speaking of being merciless, the first objective that we're going to look at is Merciless Raiders. This is a surge. Score this immediately after a friendly fighter's attack action made as part of a charge action that takes an enemy fighter in enemy territory out of action. So, likely to happen, in the first or second activation, depending on what your targets are. Tamiel's impact, being able to do 2 damage from 3 away is a pretty big deal. And now that we know that he has Riptide, you could do your 2 damage and then actually pull that fighter closer to your other fighters.
Yeah.
Set up an attack.
Yeah, and the
Merciless Raiders is good. Like it.
It is good. And the second objective that I think is pretty easy, especially turn 1, is Surging Tide. Surge. Score this immediately after one friendly's second or subsequent move actions in the same phase. Given that they all have Flood Tide, if you have this in your hand first turn, my first activation, I'm just moving, and then sometime later on in that round, I'll move again to score this beautiful single glory objective.
And just remember, a charge is a move action followed by an attack action, so you could do it as part of a charge too. And then the last objective that we want to cover is Guardians of the Deep. This is, again, like we've talked about, the cards that we're keying into are cards that we think are reliable, especially early game. You want these cards in your opening hand. This is Guardians of the Deep. Score this in an end phase. Score this in an end phase if no enemy fighters are in your territory. You can use pushes or just kill people that come into your territory. It'll be a lot easier to score early than it is late. Yes. And that takes us to the Gambits.
Oh,
Jason's favorite.
Should I call it out right away? Just the best one. Right away. So Cloud of Midnight is choose one friendly fighter until the end of the next activation. That fighter cannot be the target of attack actions, cannot be chosen or damaged by Gambits, and cannot be pushed. So this card is great when you send a fighter in, or if you get in a position that, maybe your leader is vulnerable, you've taken, a wound or two onto them, and you have to make sure that they survive till the next round. You play Cloud of Midnight, which means they're not going to take an attack action. Or you like to play it like I play it, and you wait till someone spends a whole bunch of resources to make an attack action.
Yep.
And you say, nope, you're not doing it. So
it's perfect. It's beautiful.
You love it.
So the next one we're going to cover is Spinefin Toxin. So this keys into the most valuable fighter in this warband. Choose one enemy fighter adjacent to a friendly Spinefin. Deal 1 damage to that fighter. In addition, the chosen fighter cannot hold objectives, cannot be on guard, and cannot range 3+ attack actions. And this effect persists until the end of the round or until that fighter is out of action. So it's a free plink damage and can be disruptive to what your opponent's fighters are trying to do. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, the plink damage is really key because most of your fighters are just doing 2 damage, so that is needed. The last gambit that we're going to cover is Terror Knight Venom. So choose one friendly fighter adjacent to one or more friendly fighters. You can reroll 1 attack dice and attack rolls for attack actions made by friendly fighters that target the chosen fighter. This effect persists until the end of the round or until the fighter is out of action. Now, it is only 1 attack dice, but what I think is so good about this card is it's over and over. So, as long as you're targeting that same enemy fighter for the entire round, you're re-rolling, 1 die out of all those attacks. So I think you can get really good play out of it, as well as it sets up well with Spinefin, because Spinefin is probably next to that opponent that you want to attack anyway. So you're getting supports on top of it as well.
Sweet. All right, so on to the upgrades. The first upgrade that we want to cover is the Armor of the Sithai. And this is -1 dice from adjacent fighters' attack actions that target this fighter to a minimum of 1. So it's restricted to the Ideneth, so it's either Elathain, Furen, or Tamiel, but it's still, decreasing your opponent's accuracy, helping with resilience, things like that.
Yep, and then the next one will just be Born from Agony. This is a straight +1 wound. There's another little flavor text on here that says you don't have I'm sorry, not flavor text, but actual text. Lethal hexes cannot deal damage to this fighter. Not that we're running into many lethals lately, but if you do, you get +1 wound, and those lethals won't hurt you.
Yeah, it's nice. And then the last one that we want to call out is the critical +1 damage card. This is Hunter of Souls, +1 damage to this fighter's attack actions that target a fighter with 1 or more wound counters. Since most of your fighters are doing 2 damage, you're probably going to be attacking wounded fighters anyway. So it's going to give you an additional damage in that regard. So pretty good.
This pairs well with Spinefin Toxins.
Yes, it does. Yep. All right. What do we want for boards, Jason?
So I have really big, mobility. I'm base 4 move. When I Inspire, I'm 5 move. My Doonclaw can push when needed. I have the ability to move twice. I have the ability to move and then charge. So I want something that gets me to the back of my board.
Yeah.
That goes right into the play style of this warband. I'll just cover that now because they go hand in hand. Like, the play style for this warband is aggro, but
most of your heavy lifting you want to be done in second round. So first round you want to set up, whether that's a few attacks at the end of the round, and then really leverage all of them becoming inspired in the second round and kind of finishing the job the second round. What I found playing this warband is they start off really, really hot. They kind of peak in the middle, and then you kind of have to hold on, turn 3, because they don't have a lot of wounds. Yeah. So that is the only thing that can be kind of difficult with them, is because round 3 I'm kind of grasping.
Yeah. So. No, I agree. So in all of the playing that I have done against you, the lessons that I have taken away is you want to try to take down a fighter other than Tamiel, since Elathain can bring Tamiel back if he takes somebody out of action, and just set yourself up knowing that they're going to be coming in strong on turn 2. So if you can position yourself going into turn 2 so that you're not as vulnerable, that can help. Know that on turn 1 you're not going to be safe, especially from Tamiel. There is no place on the board that is safe from Tamiel on turn 1, because he can move 4 and then charge 4 and throw his harpoon 3. So that is a threat range of 11. So
it's pretty far.
Pretty far.
And I'm probably going to get supports with the spine fin. So
probably, yep. Yeah. So what do we rate him, Jason?
So this one's a little difficult because their deck is really good, but because this is the most complex warband that I've played, and it's not just the fighter cards, it's not just spine fin, it's everything. It's the gambits, it's the objectives, it's the upgrades. Like, they all have certain conditions, and like your opponent has to discard these 2 cards, or this effect happens, or reposition spine fin, and there's just a lot going on here. So I think that they're a ton of fun to play. I think that they can be very potent and very deadly, but they're just a lot to grasp. So with that, I'll give them a silver for how much fun and how good they are. But that new player, it's going to take a little while to learn.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, wow. So that's it. That's all of Direchasm. We managed to do it. So when we come back, we will close out the episode.
Yay!
And we are back, and this is the end. We're going to close the show out. So as always, we want to say thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you for taking the time to read the blog that we're making now. We're trying something new. It's always fun. So we always appreciate the likes, the reviews, the feedback. We have a Discord, so if you want to come hang out with us, come chat with us, you can find the link to the Discord in the show notes. You can find the link to the blog in the show notes, Facebook, Twitter, all of those things. The blog, because it's new, is just blog.battle-mallet.com, and it will have our Beastgrave Warband Rivals Warband review written up, and it will also feature the Direchasm Rivals Warband review, and then maybe we'll start publishing other content there, like Hobby Progress or else we want to do. Anyway,
who has that? Who does Hobby Progress?
Jason, we found something in the errata for the game that we wanted to call out. So why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah. So in the beginning of the episode, we had a discussion around if the championship FAQ applied to Rivals. Going through the episode, and we were looking certain stuff up for certain warbands, really the Ravagers, and there was something else we had to look up too. But it came to light that the Harrow Deep official errata of January 2022 also has the inspired steps. So some of the commentary that we had in the beginning on where inspired steps were not added into Rivals are incorrect, and they are because of the official errata to the Harrow Deep season. So the inspire steps are added. It says there is one inspire step at the start of the action phase.
specifically calling out the Soulraid and the Blade Coven. Use that Inspire Step, and one Inspire Step is added at the end of the action phase for chosen axes, the First Riders, Skaith's Wild Hunt, the Grimwatch, and the Crimson Court. So applying to a number of the warbands that we've gone through in this Rivals review.
So that's worth noting. You can find all of the errata and FAQ and everything on the Warhammer community site, but we will link to that in the show notes as well, so you can check that out. But I think that's it. So when we recorded this, the Black Powders Buccaneers and the Illusory Might deck were up for pre-order. So coming soon to a podcasting platform near you will be our Warhammer Underworld's Harrow Deep Rivals Warband review, which will include the two warbands from the starter set, so the Kainan Crew and Xandar's Truth Seekers. It will also include Black Powders Buccaneers and the Illusory Might deck. So we'll actually review that as a deck, do the same thing that we've done here, but in that one, we'll pick out a couple of warbands maybe that from past seasons that it might make sense to run with that deck, just to brush the dust and knock the rust off of some of your old models.
Yeah, looking forward to that, seeing what we can find.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. But with that, I think we'll close out the show. So for the Battle Mallet podcast, here we are. Two dads who are up way past their bedtime.
It is late.
It's totally worth it. I'm Jared signing out.
And I'm Jason Table New Murray. Get the hell out of here. It's pumpkin time.
Peace and pumpkins.
The Battle Mallet podcast is protected under the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find more information via links on podcast.battle-mallet.com. Music by Anno Domini Beats.
I'm trying, man. I don't know how to do it any faster without it just being